They say an alpha without a pack is just a man with sharper teeth. King Valor Draven learned that truth the night his own council whispered treason into silk handkerchiefs and called it mercy. You want to know what happens when the throne you bled for decides your blood is the price? Stay with me till the end. Hit that like. Drop your city in the comments. Because this story doesn't care about fairy tales. It cares about what you do when the world decides you're expendable. The Harvest Night Festival turned the capital of Nixara into a glittering lie. Silk banners the color of arterial blood hung from every balcony. Torches burned in iron braziers, casting shadows that danced like guilty thoughts across cobblestone streets. The air smelled of roasted meat, spiced wine, and the particular kind of perfume wealthy people wore when they wanted to smell expensive instead of good. King Valor Draven stood on the palace balcony and watched his empire pretend to love him. He was 34. Built like violence wrapped in expensive fabric. 6'3" of scarred muscle and controlled fury, dark hair pulled back from a face that had forgotten how to look anything but calculating. His eyes were the color of winter iron, gray that could cut through bullshit at 50 paces. Those eyes saw everything tonight. The way Lord Castor's hand lingered too long on Lady Mirren's lower back. The way Duke Fenwick's smile never quite reached the muscles around his eyes. The way every toast raised in his honor came half a second too late, like an afterthought instead of instinct. Valor had spent 15 years building this empire from the wreckage his father left behind. 15 years of bleeding, breaking, and bending people into submission, not through cruelty but through being so goddamn competent they had no choice but to follow. And now they were tired of following. He could smell it, the shift, the rot beneath the roses. "You're grinding your teeth again," a voice said behind him. Valor didn't turn. "I'm allowed. It's my festival." His cousin, Cale Draven, stepped beside him. Younger by 3 years, leaner by design, with the kind of pretty boy face that made people underestimate him right up until he had a knife in their kidney. Cale wore black silk that probably cost more than a farmer's yearly income, and an expression that said he'd rather be literally anywhere else. "They're performing loyalty like a third-rate theater troupe," Kyle observed, his voice flat. "It's embarrassing. It's strategic." Valor's jaw worked. "They think I don't notice. That's the part that pisses me off. Like I got this far by being blind." "Maybe they think you got this far by being ruthless. And ruthless men don't notice when the knife's behind their back until it's too late." Valor turned then, slowly. "You trying to tell me something, cousin?" Kyle met his eyes without flinching. That was the thing about Kyle. He was one of maybe 3 people in the entire empire who didn't treat Valor like a bomb that might detonate. "I'm telling you what you already know. The council's restless. Fenwick's been holding private dinners. Castor's been writing letters he burns instead of sending, and every single one of them is wondering the same thing." "What's that?" "Whether you're still the strongest wolf in the pack, or just the meanest." The words landed like stones in still water. Valor turned back to the festival. Down below, dancers twirled in coordinated formations. Musicians played instruments that cost more than houses. Nobles laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. And at the very edge of the courtyard, near the fountain where water ran over marble carved to look like falling stars, stood a woman who wasn't performing. She was still, almost motionless. Dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders, simple dress the color of deep wine. Face turned slightly away from the crowd like she was trying to disappear into the architecture itself. Valor didn't recognize her. That bothered him. He made it his business to recognize everyone who mattered. "Who is that?" he asked. Kyle followed his gaze, squinted. "No idea. Want me to find out?" "No." Valor kept watching. There was something about the way she held herself. Not afraid exactly. Not hiding. Just absent. Like her body was there, but the rest of her had gone somewhere no one could reach. "Leave her. You're staring at a random woman during a festival designed to celebrate your absolute power. That's not like you." "I'm not staring. I'm observing." "That's what men say when they're staring and don't want to admit it." Valor shot him a look that would have made a lesser man step back. Kyle just grinned, unimpressed. Then the woman moved. Not much, just a slight turn of her head, and Valor saw her face clearly for the first time. She wasn't beautiful in the way the noble women downstairs were beautiful, all painted perfection in calculated angles. Her beauty was quiet, structural, the kind that lived in bone-deep symmetry and eyes that looked like they'd seen things they couldn't unsee. But that wasn't what held his attention. It was the expression, or lack of one. Complete, absolute neutrality. Like someone had carved all the emotion out of her and left only the shape of a person behind. "Your Majesty," a new voice interrupted. Veilor turned. Commander Thane stood in the doorway to the balcony, broad-shouldered and grim-faced, wearing parade armor that gleamed like it had never seen real combat. Which was a lie. Thane's armor had seen plenty. He just knew how to polish evidence away. "What?" Veilor's tone could have frozen wine. "The Council requests your presence. They say it's urgent. The Council can wait. It's a festival." They were insistent, sire. Veilor studied Thane's face, saw the micro-expression that said this wasn't a request. This was the kind of urgent that came with consequences. "Fine," he pushed off the balcony railing. "Kael, stay visible. Smile. Make them think everything's perfect. I'm not a performing monkey. You're my cousin. Same thing." Veilor moved past Thane into the palace. "Let's get this over with." The council chamber smelled like old leather and older grudges. 7 men sat around the obsidian table that Veilor's grandfather had carved from a single massive stone. 7 men who controlled the noble houses that kept Nixar's economy, military, and social structure functioning. Duke Fenwick, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, controlled every grain shipment in the eastern territories. Lord Castor, younger, ambitious, commanded the southern military districts. Baron Vorel, ancient, calculating, managed the guild networks and trade routes. The others, Marek, Scythen, Corinth, and Halven, lesser in power but crucial in votes. They all stood when Veilor entered, years of conditioning, but they sat before he gave permission. New behavior, testing boundaries. Veilor noted it, catalogued it, said nothing. He took his seat at the head of the table. "This better be worth interrupting my festival." Fenwick spoke first. He usually did. "Your Majesty, we have concerns." "You always have concerns, Fenwick. That's why I pay you. Specify." "The succession." The word dropped into silence like a body into a grave. Veilor went very still. "I'm 34, in perfect health." "Why are we discussing succession?" "Because you have no heir," Castor said bluntly. "No wife, no children, no designated bloodline to stabilize the empire after you." "After me?" Veilor's voice went soft, dangerous. "That's an interesting way to phrase it. Almost like you're expecting me to die soon." "We're expecting you to think strategically," Fenwick countered. "Your father's line is thin. If something happens to you, the empire fractures. Civil war becomes inevitable. Then I'll make sure nothing happens to me." "That's not a plan," Baron Vorel wheezed. The old man looked like a corpse that had forgotten to lie down. "That's arrogance." Veilor leaned back in his chair. Every instinct screamed at him that this wasn't about succession. This was about control. They wanted him married, bound, diluted by a partner who would split his authority. "Let me be clear," he said quietly. "I will take a queen when I decide the empire needs one. Not because 7 nervous men in a room decided to have opinions about my personal life. Are we understood?" "We're not questioning your authority, Your Majesty," Marek said quickly. Too quickly. "We're protecting it." "By implying I'm incapable of managing my own dynasty?" "By suggesting that even alpha kings are mortal," Fenwick said, "and mortality requires planning." Veilor studied each face, saw the same thing in all of them. Fear. Not of him. Of what came after him. They'd gotten comfortable under his rule. Predictable. Controlled. The idea of uncertainty terrified them more than his wrath. Almost made him feel bad for what he was about to do. Almost. "Gentlemen," he said pleasantly, "I appreciate your concern. Truly, it warms my heart to know you care so deeply about my legacy." He stood. "Now get the hell out of my palace and back to the festival before I remember that unsolicited advice from subjects sounds a lot like treason." They rose, bowed, left with the kind of synchronized precision that suggested they'd rehearsed this meeting. Veilor waited until the door closed. Then he drove his fist into the obsidian table hard enough to split skin across his knuckles. Blood welled up. He watched it drip onto black stone, watched it spread, watched it disappear into the dark surface like it had never existed. That went well, Kale's voice came from the shadows. Valor didn't jump. He'd known his cousin was there. Kale had a habit of lurking in corners like ambush-flavored furniture. You hear all of it? Every enlightening word. Kale stepped into the lamplight. They're circling, not attacking yet, but circling. I know. You going to do something about it? Eventually, Valor flexed his bleeding hand. First, I'm going back to the festival. Going to smile. Going to make toasts. Going to be so goddamn charming they remember why they bent the knee in the first place. And then I'm going to find out which one of them grows a spine first. And I'm going to break it. The festival had intensified in his absence. Music louder, laughter shriller. Wine flowing like the Empire's treasury was infinite. Valor moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations, deflecting questions, playing the role of benevolent king with the skill of someone who'd been performing since childhood. But his attention kept snagging on the woman by the fountain. She was still there, still alone, still radiating that same quality of fundamental absence. A server passed with champagne. Valor took 2 glasses, altered his trajectory, and walked straight toward her. She didn't notice him approaching, or pretended not to. Hard to tell. Up close, she was maybe late 20s, skin that had seen sun but not labor, hands that knew work but weren't ruined by it. The dress was good quality but not noble tier, prosperous merchant class maybe, or landed gentry trying not to look too prosperous. You're the only person here not drinking, Valor said, offering one of the glasses. She turned, looked at him, looked at the glass, looked back at him, and said nothing. Just that same flat, neutral expression. Like he was a piece of furniture that had spontaneously grown a mouth. Valor felt something unexpected, curiosity. Not a talker, he observed. Fair enough. I'm surrounded by people who won't shut up. It's refreshing. Still nothing. But her eyes moved, fast, cataloging his face, his posture, the royal insignia on his jacket, the fresh blood on his knuckles he hadn't bothered to hide. Smart eyes, aware eyes, survivor eyes. I'm Valor, he said, even though she obviously knew. And you are? A pause, long enough to be uncomfortable. Then, Seren Vale. Her voice was low, controlled, like she was rationing words. Vale. Don't know that house. Not a house, a vineyard. North Territory. You're a long way from home for a vineyard keeper. I was invited. No emotion, just statement. By? Another pause. Lord Castor. Interesting. Castor was one of the council members who'd just questioned his succession, and here was a woman he'd invited, standing alone at a royal festival like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. Valor's instincts sharpened. And where's Lord Castor now? Seren's eyes flicked toward the eastern terrace. Brief, controlled, but definitive. Valor followed the direction, saw Castor laughing with a group of younger nobles, saw the way his hand rested on a blonde woman's waist, saw the intimacy in the gesture, saw the way Seren's jaw tightened, just a fraction, just for a heartbeat. Then nothing. Back to neutral. But Valor had seen it. Ah, he said quietly. I see. You see nothing, Seren said. Still flat, still controlled, but with an edge now, barely there, like a knife wrapped in silk. I see a woman who was invited to a festival by a man who's currently occupied elsewhere. I see someone standing alone because the person who brought her doesn't give a damn where she is. And I see someone who's very good at pretending it doesn't matter. Seren turned to face him fully for the first time. And in her eyes, just for a second, Valor saw something that made his breath catch. Rage. Not hot, not explosive. Cold. Calculated. The kind of rage that had been compressed down so hard it had turned into something denser than stone. You don't know anything about me, Your Majesty, she said softly. No, Valor agreed, but I know that look. I've worn it, usually right before I burn something down. A beat of silence. Then Seren took the champagne glass from his hand, drank it in one smooth motion, set it on the fountain's edge. "Thank you for the drink," she said. "And the concern. Neither are necessary." She turned to leave. Valor's hand shot out, not grabbing, just blocking, his palm against the fountain's marble, creating a barrier without touching her. "Stay," he said. "Not an order. Something else. Just for a minute." "Why?" "Because everyone else here is lying to me, and I'm tired of it." Seren studied him. Really looked. Like she was trying to see past the crown, the reputation, the performance. "You're the king," she said finally. "Everyone lies to kings. It's survival." "Is that what you're doing? Surviving?" "Every minute of every day." The honesty of it hit like a punch. No decoration, no metaphor, just raw truth delivered with the kind of weariness that came from years of practice. Valor lowered his hand. "Then survive here. For a few more minutes. Pretend I'm not a king. Pretend I'm just a man who's also tired of the performance." Seren's mouth almost curved. Not quite a smile. More like the ghost of one. "You're asking me to pretend you're not the most powerful person in the empire. That's a lot of pretending. I have faith in your imagination." This time she did smile. Small, sad, there and gone like lightning. Imagination's dangerous. Leads to hoping for things that don't exist. Like honesty from men who have everything to lose by giving it. Valor felt something crack open in his chest, some door he'd welded shut years ago. "I'm going to be honest with you right now. You want to hear it?" Seren's eyes narrowed, suspicious, smart. "I don't know, do I? I think you're one of the most interesting people I've met in 5 years. I think you're standing at my festival looking like you want to disappear because someone you trusted proved they weren't worth the trust. And I think if you stay here another 10 minutes, I'm going to do something incredibly stupid, like actually care what happens to you." Silence. The kind that felt like falling. Then Seren laughed, short, sharp, bitter as burned coffee. "You don't know me well enough to care. Not yet. You won't. Why not?" She looked at him, really looked. And in that moment, Valor saw something that made his king-trained, threat assessment, survival-wired brain start screaming warnings. She looked at him like she recognized him. Not his face, not his title. Something deeper, something older, like she'd met him before. In another life. In another version of reality where they were both different people with the same damage. "Because I'm no one," Seren said quietly. "And you're the king who needs to marry someone important to secure your dynasty. This," she gestured between them, "whatever you think you're feeling, it's temporary. Boredom, curiosity, it'll pass. And if it doesn't, it will." She moved past him, smooth, controlled, leaving nothing but the faint scent of something herbal, rosemary maybe, and the feeling of having just been dissected by someone who knew exactly how sharp the knife needed to be. Valor watched her disappear into the crowd. Told himself to let it go. Told himself she was right. Told himself this was stupid and dangerous and exactly the kind of distraction he couldn't afford with the council circling like sharks. Then he followed her anyway, hussing. Seren moved through the festival like water through cracks. Not fast, not obvious. Just inexorably away from the center, toward the edges, toward the shadows where the torchlight didn't quite reach. Valor tracked her with the efficiency of someone who'd spent 15 years hunting threats. Stayed back. Stayed hidden. Watched. She stopped at the eastern terrace, where Castor was. Valor positioned himself behind a marble column, close enough to hear, far enough to stay invisible. Castor had his arm around the blonde woman. Lady Alara, Valor's brain supplied automatically. Minor house. Major ambition. Known for sleeping her way through the noble ranks like it was a competitive sport. They were laughing, close, intimate. And Castor's other hand, the one not on Alara, held a wine glass. The same wine glass Valor had seen in Seren's quarters earlier when he had done a routine security sweep before the festival. The glass with the small chip on the rim. The one Seren had mentioned in passing to a servant, saying it was her favorite despite the flaw. Castor was using her glass, using it to drink with another woman. It was such a small thing, meaningless to anyone else. But Valor understood symbolism, understood the language of deliberate cruelty. Castor knew that was her glass, and he didn't care. Seren stood 15 feet away, watching, silent, and on her face, nothing. Not pain, Not anger, not heartbreak, nothing. Like someone had scooped out everything human and left only the frame. Valor felt rage ignite in his chest, hot, immediate, the kind that made him want to walk over there and break Castor's neck just for existing. But he didn't move, because Seren did. She walked straight up to them. Castor saw her. His expression flickered, surprise, then annoyance, then something worse, dismissal. "Seren," he said, flat, like acknowledging a servant. "I thought you'd left." "I'm leaving now," she said, voice steady, controlled. "I wanted to return this." She held out something. Valor couldn't see what. Castor took it, looked down, and his face went hard. "This is yours. You left it at the vineyard. I don't need it anymore." Valor's angle shifted. He saw what she'd handed over. A ring. Simple. Silver. The kind men gave women when they wanted to promise something without actually committing. "Seren, don't be dramatic," Castor said. Annoyed. Like she was a child throwing a tantrum. "I'm not. I'm being clear." Still that same controlled voice. "We're done. Don't come back to the vineyard. Don't write. Don't pretend you were ever planning a future that included me." Alara laughed. High, cruel. "Oh, how sweet. The little vineyard girl thought she was special." Seren turned to her, looked her up and down with the kind of clinical assessment usually reserved for livestock. "You're welcome to him," Seren said. "He's mediocre in bed, lies about his finances, and cries after he drinks too much. But I'm sure you already know that." Alara's face went crimson. Castor's went white, then red, then violent. He grabbed Seren's wrist, hard. "You don't talk to her like that. You don't talk to me like that. Know your place." And there it was. The thing Valor had been waiting for. The moment that would tell him everything he needed to know about Sayre and Vale. She looked at Castor's hand on her wrist, looked at his face, and smiled. It was the coldest smile Valor had ever seen. "My place," she said softly, "is anywhere I decide it is. Your place is exactly where your ambition puts you, which is currently holding on to a woman who doesn't want you anymore and pretending it's control." She twisted, fast, efficient, break-hold technique that shouldn't exist in a vineyard keeper's skill set. Castor's grip broke. He stumbled back. Seren walked away. Didn't run. Didn't hurry. Just walked. Spine straight, head high, like a queen leaving peasants behind. Valor felt something in his chest that might have been recognition, or inevitability, or something far more dangerous. He waited exactly 3 seconds. Then he stepped out from behind the column. Castor saw him, went pale. "Your Majesty, I was just leaving," Valor finished. His voice could have frozen fire. "Weren't you, Lord Castor?" Yes, of course. My apologies. Not to me. I don't care. But you might want to apologize to your ambition, because you just showed me exactly how weak you are." He walked past them, following the path Seren had taken, found her at the palace gates, standing in the dark, looking out at the city like she was memorizing the view before it disappeared. Valor approached slowly. That was impressive. Seren didn't turn. What was? The wrist break, the exit, the complete destruction of his ego in under 30 seconds. He earned it, I'm sure. But most people don't have the spine to deliver what's earned. They just take the pain and pretend it doesn't hurt. I'm not most people. I'm starting to understand that. Seren finally looked at him. Her eyes were dry. No tears, no breakdown, just exhaustion. "Why are you here, Your Majesty?" Valor pulled off his formal jacket. Heavy, velvet, lined with silk, the kind of garment that cost more than most people earned in a year. He draped it over her shoulders. She froze. "What are you doing? You're cold." "I'm not." "Liar." She pulled the jacket tighter, didn't give it back. "This is inappropriate." "Probably. People will talk. They always do. Your council can go to hell, along with everyone else who thinks they have a say in what I do with my time." Seren stared at him, something shifting behind her eyes, some calculation, some reassessment. "You don't know me," she said again, softer this time. Less certain. Not yet, Valor agreed. But I know this. You just walked away from someone who treated you like you were disposable. You did it with dignity, control, and more strength than half the men in that palace have ever shown. And I want to know how. How what? How you survived whatever made you that strong. Because people aren't born like this. They're forged. Seren's breath caught, just for a second. Then she pulled his jacket off her shoulders, handed it back. Thank you for the kindness, Your Majesty, but I should go. Stay. Why? Because I'm asking. That's not a reason. It's the only one I have. She held his jacket between them. Barrier, shield, symbol. You're the king, she said quietly. You can ask for anything. Demand it. Take it. Why are you asking me? Valor took the jacket, but didn't put it back on, just held it. Because taking things is easy, and I'm tired of easy. I want something real, even if it's just 5 more minutes of honest conversation with someone who isn't performing. Seren's eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle, found none. And for the first time since he'd met her, something cracked in her expression, some fragment of the wall coming down. 5 minutes, she said. 5 minutes. They stood there, in the dark, at the edge of everything. 2 people who'd been forged in different fires but recognized the same heat. And neither of them knew that across the courtyard, hidden in shadows deeper than theirs, members of the council were watching, taking notes, making plans, sharpening knives. The 5 minutes became 20, then an hour. They didn't talk about anything important. Weather, wine, the architecture of the fountain behind them, surface-level conversation that should have been boring except it wasn't because neither of them was performing anymore. Valor learned that Seren had inherited the vineyard from her mother, that she'd been running it alone for 3 years, that she preferred winter to summer because the vines looked honest when they were bare. Seren learned that Valor hated festivals, that he'd read the same book 17 times because it was the only one that didn't try to teach him lessons, that he'd killed his first man at 16 and still remembered the way the blood had felt on his hands, warm, then cold, then just sticky. They talked like 2 people who'd given up pretending they were anything other than damaged. And somewhere in that hour, something shifted. Not romance. Not yet. Something more fundamental. Recognition. The kind that happens when one survivor looks at another and understands without words that they've both walked through the same kind of fire. Valor felt it in his chest. This pull. This magnetic inevitability that said whatever this was, it wasn't going to be simple. And simple was the only thing he could afford. Kings didn't get to want things that complicated the empire. They got to want strategy, stability, alliances that made sense on paper and in practice. They didn't get to want women who broke wrist holds like trained soldiers and looked at them like they could see straight through the performance to the exhausted man underneath. But here he was, wanting anyway, dangerous, stupid, inevitable. I should go, Seren said finally. Not because she wanted to, because she was smart enough to recognize when something was about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. You could stay, Valor heard himself say, in the palace, as a guest. Why would I do that? Because I'm asking. That's still not a reason. Because I want to know what happens next. Seren stood very still, processing, calculating. What happens next is I go home. You stay here. We both forget this conversation happened, and your council finds you a wife who makes political sense. I don't want political sense. You're a king. You don't get to want anything else. Watch me. She looked at him like he'd just said something in a language she didn't speak. You don't know me well enough to want this, whatever this is. Then let me know you. Why? The question hung in the air between them, heavy, loaded. Valor could have lied, should have lied, could have given her some diplomatic answer about finding her interesting or wanting to understand his subjects better. Instead, he told the truth. Because in 15 years of ruling, you're the first person who's looked at me like I'm human instead of useful. And I don't want to lose that. Seren's breath caught, visible, audible. For a long moment she didn't speak, then, Your Majesty, Valor, just for tonight, just here, no titles. Valor. His name in her mouth sounded different, more real. This is a mistake. Probably. It won't end well. Most things don't. I'm not who you think I am. Neither am I. She smiled, sad, tired, true. Then we're both lying to each other. Is that a yes? It's a recognition that I'm too tired to keep saying no. Valor felt something in his chest crack open wider. I'll take it. He offered his arm, formal, old-fashioned, the kind of gesture that belonged in ballrooms and throne rooms. Seren looked at it like it might bite. Then she took it. And as they walked back into the palace together, the king who'd never learned how to want anything that wasn't strategic, and the woman who'd survived something she wouldn't name, neither of them saw the figure watching from the shadows. Kyle Draven, standing motionless, expression unreadable. He pulled out a small communication device, spoke quietly into it. He took the bait. Proceed to phase 2. Then he disappeared into the dark like he'd never been there at all. Morning came too fast and too bright. Valor woke in his chambers with sunlight trying to murder him through the windows, and the taste of last night's wine coating his mouth like regret. He'd given Seren guest quarters in the East Wing, walked her there personally, didn't kiss her, didn't touch her beyond the formal arm-in-arm, just looked at her for a long moment at her door and said goodnight, like he was 16 instead of 34. She'd smiled, small, real, then closed the door between them. And Valor had walked back to his own rooms feeling like he'd just done something either incredibly right or catastrophically stupid. This morning, he was leaning towards stupid. He dragged himself out of bed, rang for coffee, got halfway through getting dressed before Commander Thane knocked. "Enter!" Valor called, buttoning his shirt with the efficiency of someone who'd been dressing himself in expensive clothes since childhood. Thane stepped in, face grim, holding a document, never a good sign. "Report," Valor said flatly. "The council has submitted a formal petition." "About?" "Your guest, Seren Vale." Valor's hand stilled on his buttons. "What about her?" "They're requesting a full background investigation, lineage verification, security clearance protocols. She's a vineyard keeper, not a foreign spy. They're concerned about the proximity, Your Majesty." Translation. They'd seen him with her, seen him care, and now they were going to use it. Valor finished buttoning his shirt. Methodical, controlled. "Tell the council I'll consider their petition after they explain why 7 grown men are so threatened by a woman I had a conversation with. They're not threatened. They're protecting my interests. I know. They're always protecting my interests, usually right before they try to control them." Thane shifted, uncomfortable. "There's more. There always is. Lord Castor filed a complaint, says Seren Vale assaulted him at the festival." Valor went very still, the kind of still that preceded violence. "He what?" "He's claiming she attacked him without provocation, broke his wrist, threatened him in front of witnesses. She broke a hold after he grabbed her first. That's not his version. Then his version is a lie. Witnesses support his account." "Which witnesses?" "Lady Elara, Baron Varel, 3 servants, all people loyal to Castor. Or the council. Or both." Valor felt rage build in his chest like pressure behind a dam. Cold, calculated, the kind that didn't explode. It froze everything it touched. "Where is she now?" he asked quietly. "Still in her quarters, under informal guard." "Under guard? You arrested my guest?" "Not arrested, protected. Given the allegations, get out!" Thane blinked. "Your Majesty, get out of my sight before I remember that following illegal orders is treason. The council authorized. I don't care what the council authorized. I am the king. My word is law, not theirs. Get out." Thane left, fast, smart. Valor stood alone in his chambers, breathing carefully, controlling the urge to break something expensive. They were testing him, pushing boundaries, seeing how far they could manipulate him through something he cared about. And he'd given them the weapon by being obvious about Seren. Stupid, sloppy, amateur mistake. He should cut his losses. Send her home. Forget last night happened. Should. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and headed for the east wing. Bammt. Two guards stood outside Serene's door. They saw Valor coming and snapped to attention, professional, nervous. "Move," Valor said. They moved. He opened the door without knocking. Serene stood by the window, still wearing last night's dress, hair loose, face pale but composed. She turned when he entered. No surprise. Like she'd been expecting him. "They told you," she said. Statement, not question. "They told me a version. I want yours." "Why?" "You already know what happened. You were there." "I want to hear you say it." Serene crossed her arms, defensive posture, protective. "Castor grabbed me. I removed his hand. He's calling it assault because his ego can't handle being refused. Witnesses say you attacked him. Witnesses lie when it's convenient." "I know." She studied his face, looking for something. "So what now? You send me home to keep your council happy? Sacrifice me to keep the peace? Is that what you think I'd do?" "I think you're a king. Kings make strategic choices. I'm not strategic. I'm a complication." Valor moved closer, slow, deliberate. "You're right. You are a complication. The worst kind. Because I should send you home. Should forget last night. Should choose the smart, safe, political option." He stopped in front of her, close enough to see the silver flecks in her eyes. "But I'm not going to." Serene's breath hitched. "Why not?" "Because I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. Tired of letting the council dictate who I talk to, who I trust, who I—" He stopped. Recalibrated. "They're using you to control me. And I don't respond well to control. So this is about pride. This is about making a choice that's mine, not theirs. And if that choice starts a war, then it starts a war." Serene stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You'd risk your empire over a conversation with a vineyard keeper?" "I'd risk my empire over the principle that I don't bow to manipulation. They want you gone because they saw me care. So I'm keeping you here specifically because they want the opposite." "That's insane. Welcome to absolute power. It makes you crazy." Despite everything, Serene almost smiled. "You're serious. Completely. They'll make this worse. They'll try. You don't owe me this." "I know." "Then why?" Valor reached out, slow, gave her time to move away. She didn't. His hand cupped her face, gentle, deliberate. "Because yesterday I was a king going through the motions. Today I'm a man who wants something real, and I don't get many chances at real, so I'm taking this one." Serene's eyes closed, just for a second, like she was absorbing the weight of what he was saying. When they opened again, something had shifted. Decision made. "This is a terrible idea," she said quietly. "Most of mine are. I'm going to ruin your political future. My political future can go to hell. Your council will hate me. They already do. Might as well earn it." She laughed, short, sharp. "You're impossible. You're not the first person to notice." Then, because the universe had terrible timing, someone knocked. Loud, aggressive, official. Valor dropped his hand, stepped back. "Enter." The door opened. Duke Fenwick stood there, silver hair perfect, expression carved from diplomatic stone. Behind him, the entire council, all 7 of them. This was a power play, a show of force. Valor felt his entire body go cold, combat ready. "Your Majesty," Fenwick said, voice smooth, controlled. "We need to speak with you, privately." "I'm busy. It's urgent." "Everything is urgent with you people. Specify." Fenwick's eyes flicked to Serene, dismissive. "It concerns matters of state security, not appropriate for civilian ears." "Then speak freely. Serene Vale is my guest. She has clearance. She has allegations. She has lies told about her by a man with hurt pride. Not the same thing." Lord Castor stepped forward. His wrist was wrapped. Theatrical. Performative. Valor wanted to break the other one. "Your Majesty," Castor said, voice dripping false respect. "I understand you have affection for Miss Vale, but her actions at the festival cannot be ignored. She attacked a sitting lord. That's treason." You grabbed her first. That's assault. I was preventing her from making a scene. By putting your hands on her without permission? Interesting prevention strategy. There are witnesses who are loyal to you, which makes them worthless. The council shifted, uncomfortable. They hadn't expected him to be this direct. Baron Vorel wheezed into the silence. Your Majesty, this isn't about Lord Castor's personal affairs. It's about protocol, security. The woman appeared from nowhere, attached herself to you, and now she's residing in the palace under questionable circumstances. We have a duty to investigate. Investigate what? Her crime of existing while I find her interesting? Her background, Fenwick said smoothly. Her lineage, her intentions. She's a vineyard keeper. Her lineage is grapes. Her intention is to go home. You're inventing problems. We're protecting you. From what? A conversation? From vulnerability. The word landed like a slap. Valor understood instantly. This wasn't about Seren. This was about him showing weakness, showing that he could be influenced, showing that he was human instead of invulnerable. Kings weren't allowed to be human. Gentlemen, Valor said quietly, dangerously. I'm going to say this once. Seren Vale is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or spreads lies about her will answer to me personally, not the council, not the courts, me. Are we clear? You're making a mistake, Fenwick said. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. The Empire is mine. I built it. I bled for it. I decide who stands in it, not you. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Then Castor made his move. She's dangerous, he said flatly. I don't know who she really is, but that woman is not a simple vineyard keeper. The way she moves, the way she thinks, she's trained, educated beyond her station, and she appeared exactly when we started questioning your succession. That's not coincidence. Valor felt Seren go still beside him. Interesting. You're suggesting what? Valor asked. That she's an assassin? A spy? I'm suggesting she's not who she claims. Neither are you. You claim to be loyal. The evidence suggests otherwise. Castor's face went red. I have served this empire with ambition and mediocrity. Congratulations. You want a medal? The room went silent. No one talked to council members like that, not even kings, except Valor just had. Fenwick recovered first. Your Majesty, we're not your enemies. We're trying to help you see clearly. I see perfectly. You're threatened because I made a choice you didn't approve. So you're manufacturing crisis to regain control. It's transparent. It's pathetic. And it ends now. And if we insist on an investigation, then you can investigate. But you do it through proper channels, with evidence, with actual cause, not fabricated witness testimony from compromised sources. We have cause. Her behavior was self-defense. Next argument. Baron Vorel coughed. Wet. Rattling. The people will talk, Your Majesty. A king showing favoritism to a common woman. It undermines authority. The people will talk regardless. They always do. I'd rather they talk about me being human than being a puppet. You're risking everything for her, Fenwick said. Not angry, just factual. Why? Valor looked at Seren. Really looked. She stood silent, watching, face neutral but eyes sharp, calculating, assessing, surviving. And in that moment, Valor made a choice that would change everything. Because she's not common, he said quietly, and you all know it. That's why you're scared. The council went rigid. Seren's eyes widened, fractional, shocked. Valor continued, You saw the way she carries herself, the way she thinks, the way she ended Castor's grab with technique that doesn't come from running a vineyard. You saw it. And instead of being curious, you're threatened because she doesn't fit your categories. And things that don't fit categories are dangerous. Your Majesty, Fenwick started. I'm not finished. Here's what's going to happen. Seren Vale stays in the palace as my personal guest. You will treat her with respect. You will not investigate her without my explicit permission. And if I find out any of you have threatened, harassed, or spread lies about her, I will strip your titles so fast you'll forget you ever had them. You can't. I'm the king. I can do whatever I want. That's how absolute power works. You should know. You helped me consolidate it. The silence that followed could have suffocated stars. Then Fenwick bowed, stiff, forced. As you wish, Your Majesty. The others followed, mechanical, resentful. They filed out, one by one, until only Vylor and Seren remained. Vylor waited for the door to close, then he turned to her. Now, he said quietly, you want to tell me who you really are? Seren's face went carefully blank. I already told you, Seren Vale, vineyard keeper. Vineyard keepers don't move like you do, don't think like you do, don't survive confrontations with the kind of control you showed. Maybe I'm just resilient. Maybe, or maybe Castor was right. Maybe you are more than you're claiming. Does it matter? Yes? Why? Because I just declared war on my own council for you, and I'd like to know if I'm protecting a lie or a person. Seren looked at him for a long moment, something painful moving behind her eyes. What if I'm both? She asked softly. Then tell me which part is real. She moved to the window, looked out at the empire spreading below the palace. The vineyard is real. My mother left it to me. That's true. And the rest? The rest is complicated. I have time. You have a kingdom to run. The kingdom can wait. Talk to me. Seren pressed her palm against the glass. What do you want me to say? That I'm secretly nobility? That I'm hiding some grand lineage? That I'm a threat? I want you to say the truth. The truth is I'm nobody. Just someone who learned how to survive things that should have killed me. Is that enough? What things? Things I don't talk about. Because they're classified or because they hurt? Both. Valor moved beside her, close but not touching. I told you yesterday. I've killed people. I've made choices that haunt me. I understand things you can't talk about. This is different. How? Because if I tell you, you'll either think I'm insane or you'll realize the council is right to be afraid. Try me. Seren closed her eyes, breathing carefully. I don't remember my childhood clearly, just fragments, flashes, like someone took scissors to my memories and cut out everything important. Trauma can do that. Not like this. This was deliberate, systematic, like someone scrubbed me clean and rebuilt me into something simpler. Valor went very still. That's not possible. I know, but it happened anyway. You're saying someone erased your memories? I'm saying I wake up sometimes knowing things I shouldn't know, understanding power structures I've never studied, reading people like I was trained to do it, and I don't know why. That's insane. I know, which is why I don't talk about it. She turned to face him, and in her eyes, Valor saw something that made his breath catch. Fear. Real fear. The kind that came from not knowing if you could trust your own mind. Sometimes, she said quietly, I look at this empire and I recognize it. Not like I've visited. Like I've lived here. Like these halls were mine once. And then the feeling passes and I'm just a vineyard keeper again. Just Seren. Just nobody. You're not nobody. How do you know? Because nobody doesn't survive what you survived. Doesn't move like you move. Doesn't look at a king like he's just a man. Maybe I'm just good at pretending. Or maybe you're remembering something you were supposed to forget. Seren's breath caught. You believe me? I believe you believe it. That's enough for now. She stared at him like he'd just handed her something precious. Why aren't you afraid of me? Because I've spent 15 years surrounded by people who pretend to be more than they are. You're the first person I've met who might actually be more than she's pretending to be. That's not scary. That's interesting. Your council doesn't think so. My council is terrified of anything they can't control, which means you're exactly the kind of person I should keep close. That's a terrible strategy. Most of mine are. Seren almost smiled. You keep saying that because it keeps being true. A knock interrupted them. Again. Valor was starting to hate doors. What? He called out, Kael's voice. We have a problem. We always have a problem. This one's bigger. Valor opened the door. Kael stood there looking grim. Behind him, Commander Thane. Also grim. Never good. Report, Valor said. Messengers arrived from the northern border, Thane said. The mountain clans are moving, military formations, coordinated. They're preparing for something. War? Unknown, but the timing is suspicious. Timing? Kale stepped closer, lowered his voice. They're moving now. Right after the festival, right after you took a public interest in a mysterious woman, someone sending them information, someone inside the palace. Valor's blood went cold. You're saying we have a traitor. I'm saying we have multiple traitors, and they're using your distraction with Seren to make their move. Seren spoke behind him. I should leave. If my presence is causing... No, Valor cut her off, sharp, certain. That's what they want. They want you gone because you're the variable they can't predict. So you stay. Your Majesty, Thane said carefully. With respect, the woman may be the catalyst. If we remove her, the situation might stabilize. Or it might prove that I can be manipulated, that I'll sacrifice anyone to keep the peace, that I'm weak. You're not weak, Seren said quietly. You're being smart. Smart would have been sending you home yesterday. I'm way past smart. He turned to Kael. Double the guard on her quarters. No one gets close without my permission. Not council, not servants, no one. You're making her a target, Kael said. She already is. Now I'm just making it official. And if the council revolts, then they revolt, and I deal with it, but I'm done letting them dictate my choices. Kael studied his cousin's face, something shifting in his expression. You really care about her. I really care about making my own decisions. That's not what I asked. Valor didn't answer, because the answer was complicated, dangerous, true. Yes, he cared. More than was smart, more than was safe. And that caring was about to cost him everything. Implement the security protocols, he said instead. Mobilize the Southern Legions. If the mountain clans want war, we'll give them one, but we do it on our terms. And the council? Thane asked. Let them complain. I'll deal with them after I deal with the external threat. The men left. Efficient. Professional. Leaving Valor alone with Seren again. She looked at him with something like wonder. You're going to war. Because of me. I'm going to war because someone's trying to destabilize my empire. You're just the excuse they're using. Still nothing. This was always coming. They've been circling for months. You just accelerated the timeline. I'm sorry. Don't be. I prefer my enemies obvious. Seren moved closer, tentative. What happens now? Now I go be a king, make strategic decisions, probably kill some people. And me? Valor looked at her, really looked. At the woman who might be nobody or might be everything. At the variable that had turned his controlled empire into chaos. At the person he'd chosen over stability. You stay here, stay safe, and when this is over, we figure out who you really are. What if we don't like the answer? Then we deal with it, together. She reached out, touched his hand, brief, gentle. Thank you, she said quietly, for choosing this. Even if it's a mistake. It's probably not a mistake, Valor said. It's probably worse than that. What's worse than a mistake? Fate. He left before she could respond. Before he could do something stupid like kiss her or promise her things he couldn't guarantee. Before he could admit that somewhere between yesterday and today, she'd stopped being a distraction and started being something far more dangerous. She'd started being real. And real things could hurt you in ways strategic choices never could. The War Council met within the hour. Maps spread across tables. Troop movements marked in red. Intelligence reports stacked like evidence. Valor stood at the head of the table, Kael beside him, Commander Thane presenting. The council members sat in their designated positions, silent, tense, waiting. The mountain clans have mobilized 5,000 warriors, Thane reported, positioned along the northern ridges. They're not advancing yet, but they're ready. What triggered this? Baron Vorel asked. Unknown, but the timing suggests coordination. Someone told them to move now. Someone here, Kael added, not subtle. Someone who knew the king would be distracted. All eyes turned to Valor. He met each gaze. Steady, unflinching. Let me be clear, he said quietly. If I find out any of you have been communicating with hostile forces, I won't bother with trials. I'll kill you myself, slowly. Are we understood? Nods. Nervous. Sincere. Maybe. Good. Now here's what we're going to do. We mobilize the Southern legions, march them north, show strength, make it clear that any aggression will be met with overwhelming force. That leaves the capital vulnerable, Fenwick said. Then we increase the palace guard, pull reserves from the eastern territories. That weakens our trade routes. Then we weaken the trade routes. I'd rather lose revenue than lose the empire. Your Majesty, Lord Castor spoke up, tentative. This conflict could be avoided if we simply address the variable. Everyone knew who he meant. Valor's voice went arctic. If you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, choose your next words very carefully. I'm suggesting that Miss Vale's presence has created instability. Removing her might restore balance. Or it might prove that I'm weak, that I'll sacrifice anyone to avoid conflict, that I can be controlled through fear. It would be strategic. It would be cowardice. The word hung in the air like a blade. Castor flushed. I'm trying to protect the empire. You're trying to protect your own interests, not the same thing. The empire is more important than one woman. The empire is built on principles. One of them is that I don't abandon people under my protection, ever. If I break that principle to avoid conflict, the empire becomes meaningless. You're risking everything for her, Fenwick said. Not accusing, just factual. I'm risking everything for the principle that I'm the king. Not you, not the council, me. And I make the choices that define this empire. Silence. Then Kyle spoke. Quiet, measured. What if they're right? What if keeping her here costs us the empire? Valor turned to his cousin, the one person he thought he could trust completely. Then it costs us the empire, he said simply. And we rebuild. That's insane. Probably. But I'm done being controlled by fear. He turned back to the council. We mobilize at dawn, prepare for siege warfare if necessary, and send a message to the mountain clans. Tell them aggression will be met with annihilation. And if they attack anyway, Thane asked, then we show them why this empire has stood for 300 years. Not because we compromise, because we don't. The council dispersed, reluctant, worried, leaving Valor alone with Kyle. His cousin looked at him with something like concern. You're really doing this. You're choosing her over stability. I'm choosing principle over manipulation. That's not what this is, and you know it. Then what is it? Kale stepped closer. You're lonely. You've been lonely for 15 years, and she's the first person who's looked at you like you're human. So you're making strategic mistakes disguised as principles. The observation landed like a punch, because it was true, not completely, but enough. Maybe, Valor admitted, or maybe I'm tired of being alone. Maybe I'm tired of making choices that serve everyone except me. Maybe I want something real for once. Real things break, cousin. Strategic things last. Then let them break. At least I'll have had them. Kale studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. All right. Your empire. Your funeral. But when this goes wrong, and it will go wrong, don't say I didn't warn you. I won't. Kyle left, leaving Valor standing alone in the war room, surrounded by maps of an empire he'd built through blood and calculation. An empire he was now risking for a woman he barely knew, a woman who might be nobody, or might be the key to everything. And somewhere in the palace, Seren stood at her window and watched the preparations begin. Watched soldiers mobilize, watched the empire shift into war footing, all because she'd broken a wrist hold and caught a king's attention. She pressed her hand against the glass and felt something stir in her chest. Something old, something buried, something that remembered thrones and power and empires burning. And for just a moment, her reflection in the glass looked different. Not a vineyard keeper, a queen. Then the moment passed, and she was just Seren again, just a woman who'd survived something she couldn't remember and caught the attention of a king who was about to destroy everything for her. She closed her eyes and whispered into the dark, I'm sorry, for whatever I am, for whatever this costs you. But no one was there to hear, and in the shadows beyond her door, guards stood watch, not to protect her from threats outside, but to keep her from leaving, because Valor had made his choice, and now they all had to live with the consequences, or die with them. Midnight came with no moon, perfect for betrayal. In the council chamber, 6 men gathered in secret. No guards, no witnesses. Duke Fenwick spoke first. He's lost perspective. The woman has him compromised. Compromised is generous, Castor spat. He's obsessed, reckless, dangerous. He's still the king, Baron Vorel wheezed. We can't just— Can't we? Lord Marek interrupted. We put his family on the throne. We can remove them just as easily. That's treason, Vorel said, but his voice lacked conviction. That's survival, Fenwick corrected. If Valor destroys the Empire chasing some fantasy with a mysterious woman, we all burn with him. So what do you propose? Lord Scythen asked. Fenwick leaned forward, eyes cold, calculating. We give him one more chance, one final opportunity to choose the Empire over the woman, and if he refuses, then we make the choice for him. The silence that followed tasted like conspiracy, like coup, like the end of everything. And none of them noticed the figure listening in the shadows. The figure who would report everything to the king, the figure who was about to set everything in motion. Because fate doesn't ask permission, it just arrives. And it always costs more than you're willing to pay. Dawn came with blood on its breath. Valor stood on the training grounds, watching his soldiers drill, spears moving in synchronized formations, shields locking, the machinery of war preparing to grind whoever was stupid enough to challenge him. He'd slept maybe 2 hours, spent the rest of the night reviewing troop deployments, supply chains, contingency plans, the kind of strategic thinking that had kept him alive and on the throne for 15 years. But his mind kept wandering back to the woman in the East Wing, to the way she'd touched his hand. Brief, gentle, real. To the possibility that she might be more than she claimed. To the certainty that he'd just gambled his empire on someone who might be a lie. Stupid, reckless, inevitable. Commander Thane approached from the barracks, face grim, always grim. But this morning there was something else underneath, something that looked like fear. Never good. Report, Valor said without turning. We found something in the servant quarters. Hidden correspondence. Valor's blood went cold. Whose quarters? Multiple locations. Coordinated. Systematic. Show me. They walked through corridors that suddenly felt hostile. Every shadow a threat. Every servant a potential traitor. This was what paranoia felt like. What it felt like when you realized the empire you'd built might be rotting from the inside. Thane led him to a small room in the lower levels. Stone walls, single window, Spartan. On the table, letters. Dozens of them. Coded, careful, professional. Valor picked one up, scanned it. His training in cipher breaking kicked in automatically. Years of intelligence work, years of learning to see patterns in chaos. The letter decoded in his mind. Instructions for coordinating with the mountain clans. Timing for attacks. Weaknesses in palace security. Details about troop movements that only someone with high-level access would know. And at the bottom, a signature symbol. A crown with a crack through it. The symbol of the old regime, the dynasty his grandfather had overthrown 3 generations ago. Valor's hand started shaking. Not from fear, from rage so intense it felt like ice in his veins. Where did you find these? His voice came out barely above a whisper. Scattered locations, servant quarters mostly, but the handwriting analysis suggests multiple authors, all educated, all with palace access. The council. We can't prove. I don't need proof. I need names. Thane hesitated. That hesitation told Valor everything. Say it, Valor ordered. The servants connected to these rooms. They all report directly to council members. Fenwick, Castor, Vorel, the others. All of them? Yes, Your Majesty. Valor set the letter down carefully, because if he didn't, he'd tear it apart. Then tear apart everything else in reach. His entire council, the men he'd trusted to run his empire, the men who'd sworn loyalty, the men who'd built their wealth and power on his success. All traitors. Every single one. The realization hit like a blade between the ribs. Sharp, precise, paralyzing. He'd been so focused on external threats that he'd missed the rot inside his own house. Missed the way they'd been slowly, methodically preparing to remove him. And he'd given them the perfect excuse. Seren. The mysterious woman who'd appeared from nowhere, who'd caught his attention, who'd made him vulnerable in ways he hadn't been in 15 years. They'd used her, used his interest in her, used the distraction she created to accelerate their timeline. Maybe they'd even planted her. The thought made his stomach turn. Your Majesty? Thane's voice cut through the spiral. What are your orders? Valor looked at the letters, at the evidence of systematic betrayal, at the proof that everything he'd built was built on quicksand, and he made the choice that would define everything that came next. Arrest them. All of them. Council members. Associated servants. Anyone connected to this conspiracy. Lock them in the dungeons. No visitors. No communication. That's the entire council, sire. The Empire will survive. It survived before them. It'll survive after them. Valor's voice was ice. Do it. Now. Thane saluted, left, efficient, professional, leaving Valor alone with the evidence of his failure. Because this was on him. He'd gotten comfortable, gotten complacent, believed that fear and competence would be enough to keep people loyal. But fear fades. And competence breeds resentment in people who think they could do better. He'd forgotten the fundamental rule of power. Trust no one, not even family. Especially not family. The thought made him look up sharply. Kyle, his cousin, his closest advisor, the one person who'd been by his side through everything, the one person who'd had access to everything, the one person who'd known about Saren before anyone else. No, not Kyle, not possible. But the doubt was there now. Planted, growing, Valor left the room, headed for Kyle's quarters, moving fast, purpose in every step. He didn't knock, just opened the door. Kyle sat at his desk, writing. He looked up when Valor entered, unsurprised, like he'd been expecting this. Cousin, he said calmly, you look like you've seen a ghost. I've seen letters, evidence, conspiracy. I heard. Thane works fast. You knew? I suspected. That's why I've been investigating. Valor studied his cousin's face, looking for the tell, the crack, the lie. Found nothing. Kyle's expression was open, honest, concerned, which meant either he was innocent or he was the best liar Valor had ever met. Show me your correspondence, Valor said quietly. Kyle didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just opened his desk drawer, pulled out his personal letters, set them on the desk. All of it, everything. Check whatever you need to check. Valor went through them, one by one, looking for codes, hidden messages, anything that connected to the conspiracy. Found nothing, just routine reports, supply requisitions, intelligence briefings, nothing incriminating. He looked at Kyle. You're clean. I'm loyal, not the same thing. Right now it is. Kyle leaned back in his chair. You think I'd betray you? After everything? I think everyone betrays everyone eventually. It's just a matter of price. My price is higher than they can pay. How do I know that? Because I'm still here. Because if I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Because I've had 1,000 opportunities to take the throne, and I've taken exactly none of them. The logic was sound, but logic didn't mean much when your entire world was collapsing. The council's arrested, Valor said. All of them. For treason. Good. They earned it. This creates a power vacuum. Then fill it. You're the king. A king with no council, no advisors, no infrastructure. You have me. You have Thane. You have the military. That's enough. Is it? Kale stood, moved around the desk, put his hand on Valor's shoulder. Listen to me. You built this empire from wreckage. You can build it again. Don't let their betrayal make you weak. I'm not weak. I'm tired. Then rest. After we execute the traitors, after we secure the borders, after we stabilize the empire, then you can rest. Valor wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that someone in this rotten palace was still on his side. But trust was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. I need to see her, he said instead. Saren? Yes. Why? Because I need to know if she's part of this. Kyle's expression shifted, something dark moving behind his eyes. You think she's involved? I think the timing is suspicious. She appears, I get distracted. The council accelerates their plan. It's too convenient. Or she's exactly who she says she is, and you're looking for enemies where there aren't any. Then I'll confirm that and apologize. But I need to know. Kael nodded slowly. Be careful, cousin. If she is part of this, confronting her could be dangerous. Everything's dangerous. That's never stopped me before. Valor left, headed for the East Wing, mind racing. If Seren was part of the conspiracy, he'd been played. Completely. Absolutely. Used like an amateur. If she wasn't, then she was the only real thing in his life right now. And he just gambled everything to protect her. Either way, he needed the truth, even if it destroyed him. Seren stood in her quarters looking out at the chaos below. Soldiers everywhere, movement, urgency. Something had happened, something big. She'd heard the whispers from guards, arrests, council members, treason, and she knew, absolutely knew, that this was connected to her. She was the catalyst, the excuse, the spark that had ignited the powder keg that was always waiting to explode. Guilt twisted in her chest. She should leave, should disappear, should stop being the reason a king was tearing his empire apart. But she couldn't, because something was happening inside her, something she didn't understand. Memories. Not clear, not concrete, just feelings, impressions. The sensation of walking these halls before, of knowing this palace in ways that didn't make sense, of being someone else, someone important. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn, didn't need to. She'd learned to recognize his presence, the weight of it, the intensity. You heard, Valor said. Statement, not question. Hard not to. Your palace isn't exactly subtle. It never was. That was the point. She turned then, looked at him, saw the exhaustion carved into his face, the rage barely controlled beneath the surface, the doubt that was eating him alive. You think I'm part of it? She said quietly. The conspiracy. He didn't deny it. Are you? No? That's what someone part of it would say. It's also what someone innocent would say. So we're at an impasse. Valor moved closer, predator circling, assessing. The timing is too perfect. You appear. I get distracted. They move. It's textbook manipulation. Or it's coincidence. Bad luck? Wrong place? Wrong time. I don't believe in coincidence. Then you don't believe me. I don't know what to believe anymore. Seren felt something crack in her chest, because she'd known this was coming. Known that eventually he'd have to choose between trusting her and trusting his paranoia. And paranoia always won. It had to. That's what kept kings alive. Ask me anything, she said. I'll tell you the truth. Will you? Yes. Why should I trust that? Because I have nothing to gain by lying to you. If I was part of this conspiracy, I'd be gone by now. I'd have disappeared the moment things got complicated. But I'm still here. Maybe you're supposed to be here. Maybe that's the plan. Then it's a terrible plan, because I've accomplished nothing except making you suspicious. Valor stopped moving, stood in front of her, close enough that she could see the silver in his eyes, the violence barely restrained. Tell me who you are, he said, voice low, dangerous. No evasions, no half-truths. Tell me who you really are. Seren met his gaze, unflinching. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the truth. I don't know who I am. I remember the vineyard. I remember my mother. I remember surviving. But before that, nothing. Just gaps. Just feelings that don't connect to anything real. That's convenient. It's terrifying. You want to know what it's like to wake up every day not knowing if your memories are real? Not knowing if the person you think you are is actually who you are? Sounds like a good cover story. It sounds like trauma, the kind that breaks people, the kind I've been living with for years. Valor studied her face, looking for the crack, the tell, the proof that she was lying, found none. Because she wasn't lying, she really didn't know, and that should have been reassuring. Instead, it was worse. Because if she didn't know who she was, then she couldn't guarantee she wasn't dangerous. The council is arrested, Valor said flatly. All of them, for conspiring against me, For coordinating with hostile forces, for treason. Seren's eyes widened. Genuine shock. All of them? Every single one. That's necessary. They were planning a coup, using you as the excuse to move, claiming I was compromised, vulnerable, unfit to rule. Because of me. Because of what I chose. You were just the symbol. She turned away, pressed her hand against the window. I should go. This is exactly what they wanted. Me here. You distracted. The empire falling apart. If you leave now, you prove them right. If I stay, you risk everything. I already risked everything. Might as well see it through. Seren laughed, bitter, sharp. You're insane. Most kings are. It's a job requirement. She turned back to face him. Why are you doing this? Why are you protecting me when every instinct you have is screaming that I'm the threat? Valor was silent for a long moment. Then, because those instincts have been wrong before. Because I'm tired of making decisions based on fear. Because maybe, just maybe, you're the one real thing in this entire rotten palace. Or maybe I'm the thing that destroys you. Then I'll die knowing I chose something for myself, instead of letting fear choose for me. The words hung between them. Heavy, true, dangerous. Seren felt something shift in her chest, something that might have been hope, or might have been the beginning of something worse. She reached out, touched his face. Gentle, careful. You're going to regret this, she whispered. Probably, Valor agreed, but not today. He leaned into her touch. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remember what it felt like to be human instead of king. Then he pulled back. Professional, controlled. Stay here. Don't leave these rooms. Don't trust anyone except me. Not even Kael? Especially not Kael. You think he's involved? I think I can't afford to trust anyone right now. He moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. If you are part of this, he said quietly, if you are lying to me, if any of this is manipulation, tell me now. Give me that much. Seren met his eyes. I'm not lying. I wish I was. It would be simpler. But I'm just a woman who doesn't know who she is, caught in the orbit of a king who's too stubborn to let her go. Valor nodded. Once, sharp, then left, leaving Seren alone with her thoughts and the growing certainty that whatever she was, whoever she'd been, it was about to come crashing down on both of them. She moved to the mirror, looked at her reflection, and for just a second, just a heartbeat, she saw something else. Not Seren Vale, someone older, harder, royal, someone wearing a crown. Then it was gone, and she was just herself again. Ordinary, unremarkable, nobody. She pressed her hand against the glass and whispered to her reflection, Who are you? But the reflection didn't answer. It never did. The interrogations began at noon. Vialor sat in the throne room converted to tribunal, cold, efficient, merciless. One by one, the council members were brought before him in chains, Duke Fenwick first, silver hair disheveled, pride wounded, but still defiant. This is a mistake, Your Majesty, he said, voice steady. We were protecting the empire. By conspiring with hostile forces? By preparing contingencies in case you became compromised. Compromised by what? A woman? A conversation? Compromised by emotion, by weakness, by choosing personal desire over strategic necessity. Valor leaned forward. And you decided this without consulting me, without evidence, without proof I was actually compromised. You just assumed you knew better. We've served this empire for decades. You've profited from this empire for decades. Not the same thing. Tell me about the mountain clans. Tell me about the coordination. Fenwick's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're talking about. We found the letters, the codes, the instructions. Your handwriting is distinctive, Fenwick. You should have been more careful. Those letters are fabricated, planted. Someone is framing us. All of you? Simultaneously? That's your defense? It's the truth. Valor stood, walked down from the throne, stood in front of Fenwick, close enough to smell the fear beneath the defiance. Here's what I think happened, he said quietly. You saw me interested in Seren, saw me vulnerable, saw an opportunity to move against me. So you coordinated with the clans, created an external threat, positioned yourselves as the rational voices calling for stability, and planned to remove me the moment I chose her over the Empire. Fenwick said nothing, but his eyes flickered. Just a fraction. Confirmation. The problem with your plan, Valor continued, is that you underestimated me. You thought I'd gotten soft, comfortable, easy to manipulate, but I built this empire from blood and broken promises, and I remember how. You're making a mistake, Fenwick said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. Guards, take him back to the dungeon. Fenwick was dragged away, still protesting, still claiming innocence. Next came Castor, less composed, more desperate. Your Majesty, please. I was coerced, threatened. They said they'd destroy my family if I didn't cooperate. Did they threaten you before or after you grabbed Seren at the festival? Castor flinched. That was unrelated. Nothing is unrelated. You used her, publicly humiliated her, created the narrative that she was dangerous, all to justify my removal. I was protecting you by assaulting a woman under my protection? Interesting strategy. She's not who she claims to be. I know it. There's something wrong with her. Valor went very still. What do you know about her? Castor's eyes widened, realizing he'd said too much. Nothing. I just meant, what do you know? I heard rumors from the old families about survivors, about the purge. What purge? The one your grandfather conducted. When he took the throne, there were stories about royal children who escaped, who were hidden, who might return. Valor felt ice spread through his veins. You think Seren is... I think she appeared from nowhere with skills she shouldn't have and captured your attention exactly when we were questioning your succession. That's not coincidence. You're reaching. Am I? Look at her. Really look. The way she moves, the way she thinks. She's not common. She's trained, educated, royal. That's speculation. It's survival. If she's from the old bloodline, she's a threat to your entire dynasty. And you're protecting her because you're... Choose your next words carefully. Castor swallowed, but pressed forward. Because you're lonely. Because you want something real. Because you're human. And that humanity is going to cost you everything. Valor hit him, fast, precise, broke Castor's nose with one clean strike. Castor went down, blood streaming, gasping. That's for touching her, Valor said quietly. The execution will be for the treason. He turned to the guards. All of them. Execution at dawn, public. Make it clear what happens to traitors. The guards saluted, dragged Castor away, leaving Valor alone in the throne room, with Castor's words echoing in his mind. The purge. The old bloodline. Royal children hidden. Survivors. He'd heard the stories. Every noble family had. Whispers about his grandfather's consolidation of power. About the systematic removal of anyone with a claim to the throne. About children who disappeared. Children who might have been hidden, protected, raised in obscurity. Children who might return. Valor's mind raced, connecting dots he didn't want to connect. Seren's gaps in memory, her training, her instincts, her presence that felt familiar in ways he couldn't explain, her recognition when she looked at the palace, like she'd been here before, like she'd lived here, like she'd been... No. Impossible. But the doubt was there now, planted, growing. If Seren was from the old bloodline, if she was a survivor of the purge, if she had a legitimate claim to the throne, then everything he'd built was built on bones. And the woman he was protecting was the one person who could legally destroy him. He needed answers, real answers, and there was only one place to get them: the archives. The royal archives were buried 3 levels beneath the palace, stone and dust and secrets that were supposed to stay buried. Valor descended alone. No guards, no witnesses, just him and history. The records room smelled like decay and forgotten sins, shelves packed with documents, ledgers, death certificates, birth records, evidence of every crime his family had committed to take the throne and keep it. He found the section marked Consolidation Period, his grandfather's reign, the years when the Draven dynasty became absolute. Pulled files, one by one, execution orders, Dozens of them, noble families eliminated, entire bloodlines erased, and at the bottom of the stack, a file marked classified. Valor's hands shook as he opened it. Inside, records of children, names, ages, last known locations, and one name that made his blood freeze, Sorrentha Nix. Age 7. Removed to Northern Territories, presumed eliminated, but no death certificate, no body, no confirmation, just presumed. Valor stared at the name, at the age, at the timing. 20 years ago. Right age to be Saren now. Nix, the old royal family name, the dynasty his grandfather had overthrown. Sorrentha, close enough to Saren to be a bastardization, a hiding name, a survival name. He pulled more files, found a description: dark hair, silver eyes, small for her age, intelligent, resourceful, and a note in his grandfather's handwriting. Dangerous, even as a child. Keep watch. Eliminate when convenient. But someone hadn't eliminated her. Someone had hidden her instead, protected her, raised her as someone else. And now she was back, standing in his palace, under his protection, with gaps in her memory and instincts that screamed royalty. Valor felt the world tilt. Everything he'd thought he knew was a lie. The council hadn't been paranoid. They'd been right. Saren was a threat. Not because she wanted to be, but because she existed. And her existence undermined everything his family had built. He should kill her, right now. End the threat before it grew. Should. But he couldn't. Because somewhere between yesterday and today, she'd stopped being a threat and started being a person he cared about. And that caring was about to destroy everything. Valor closed the file, put it back, left the archives, walked through corridors that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. Because maybe they did. Maybe this palace had never really been his. Maybe he'd just been keeping it warm for the person it actually belonged to, and that person was currently locked in the East Wing, trusting him, believing he'd protect her, not knowing she was the rightful queen, not knowing he was the usurper's grandson, not knowing that the moment she remembered who she was, everything would burn. Valor reached his chambers, closed the door, leaned against it, and for the first time in 15 years he didn't know what to do. Execute the threat, or protect the woman, kill the queen, or love the person. The choice should have been simple. Kings didn't get to choose people over empires, but he wasn't just a king anymore. He was a man who'd found something real in a palace full of lies. And that reality was about to cost him everything he'd ever built. A knock on the door made him straighten. "Enter," he called. Kyle stepped in, face grave. "We have a problem. We always have a problem. This one's different. The mountain clans are advancing. Full assault. They'll reach the capital in 3 days." Valor felt the last piece of stability crumble. How many? 10,000. Maybe more. They're calling it a liberation, claiming they're freeing the empire from a corrupt dynasty. They're not wrong. Kale blinked. What? Nothing. Mobilize the defenses. Prepare for siege. We hold the capital at all costs. And the executions? Postponed. We need every soldier focused on the external threat. The council will see that as weakness. The council is in chains. They don't get to see anything. Kale studied his cousin's face. Something's wrong. What happened? Valor wanted to tell him, wanted to share the burden of what he'd discovered. But he couldn't, because if Kyle knew Saren was the rightful heir, he'd have to choose between loyalty and legitimacy. And Valor couldn't risk which he'd choose. Nothing happened. "I'm just tired. Get the defenses ready. I'll address the troops at dawn." Kyle nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe it. He left, leaving Valor alone with the weight of impossible choices. Kill the woman he was starting to care about, or watch his empire burn. There was no third option. There never was. Kings didn't get happy endings. They got necessary ones. And he was about to learn exactly how necessary cruelty could be. But first he needed to see her one more time, before he became the monster his empire needed him to be. Before he sacrificed the only real thing in his life for the lie he'd been living. Before he proved that Castor was right, that humanity was a luxury kings couldn't afford, and that love was just another word for weakness waiting to be exploited. He left his chambers, headed for the East Wing, to tell her the truth, or to kill her. He honestly didn't know which yet, and that uncertainty was the most terrifying thing of all. Valor stood outside Saren's door for 3 full minutes before he could force himself to knock. 3 minutes of wrestling with the knowledge that would change everything. 3 minutes of understanding that the woman on the other side of that door wasn't just a complication or a distraction or even a person he cared about. She was the rightful queen, and he was the grandson of the man who'd tried to erase her entire bloodline. Every king faces moments where the crown becomes too heavy to wear, where the weight of what must be done crushes whatever humanity remains beneath the performance. Most kings learn to compartmentalize, to separate the necessary from the desirable, to choose empire over heart without hesitation. But Valor had never been most kings. He'd built his rule on the principle that strength meant control, that power meant never showing weakness, that survival required cutting out anything that made you vulnerable. And now he stood outside a door, vulnerable as hell, about to face the one person who could destroy everything he'd built just by existing. He knocked. Seren opened the door immediately, like she'd been waiting, expecting him. Her eyes searched his face, saw something there that made her go still. "You know," she said quietly. Not a question. Statement. "Know what?" "Who I am. What I am. You found something." Valor stepped inside, closed the door, stood with his back against it like it was the only thing holding him upright. "Tell me about your mother," he said. Seren's breath caught. "Why?" "Because I need to hear you say it. Need to know if you know. My mother ran a vineyard, raised me alone, died 3 years ago, that's all I know." "What was her name?" "Marin. Marin Vale." "And before Vale?" Seren's eyes narrowed. "What are you asking?" "Did she ever tell you about your father, about where you came from, about who you were before the vineyard?" "No, she said the past was dead, that only survival mattered, that I should never look back." Valor moved closer, slow, deliberate. "And you believed her?" "I had no reason not to. Even with the gaps in your memory, even with the skills you shouldn't have, even with the feeling that you've been here before?" Seren's face went pale. "How do you know about that?" "Because I went to the archives, because I found records, because I know exactly who you are, Seren, or should I say Serentha." The name landed like a physical blow. Seren stumbled back, hit the wall, slid down it until she was sitting on the floor, breathing hard, eyes wide with something that looked like recognition and terror fighting for dominance. "No," she whispered. "No. I'm not." "Serentha Nyx, age 7 when you disappeared, daughter of King Aldrich Nyx and Queen Lyanna. Last surviving heir of the royal bloodline my grandfather systematically erased to take the throne. Stop. Your family was executed during the consolidation, every single member except you, because someone hid you, smuggled you north, changed your name, raised you as a commoner. Stop it. And now you're back, standing in the palace that belonged to your family, under the protection of the man whose grandfather murdered everyone you loved." Seren pressed her hands over her ears, like she could block out the truth if she just didn't hear it. But truth doesn't care about denial. It exists whether you acknowledge it or not. Valor knelt in front of her, pulled her hands away from her ears, held them, gentle, despite the violence of what he was saying. "Look at me," he commanded. She did. Eyes wet but not crying, shock and something else, something that looked like memory, fighting behind her expression. "I don't remember," she said, voice breaking. "I don't remember being her, being royal, being anything except Seren. But you feel it, don't you? The recognition, the knowing. Like your body remembers even if your mind doesn't. That doesn't mean... It means everything. It means you're not nobody. You're the legitimate heir to this throne. You're the person who has every right to take everything from me." Seren stared at him, processing, calculating. "And you came here to tell me this why? So you can kill me before I become a threat?" The question hung in the air. Honest, direct. Survival instinct wrapped in words. Valor could have lied. Should have lied. Could have told her he was here to protect her, or help her, or any number of comforting fictions. Instead, he told the truth. "I don't know. I came here to decide, to look at you, to see if I could do what's necessary. Which is? Kill you, quietly. Make it look like an accident. Eliminate the threat before anyone else discovers who you are. And can you? Valor looked at her. Really looked. At the woman who'd survived annihilation. At the queen who didn't know she was a queen. At the person who'd made him feel human for the first time in 15 years. No, he said quietly. I can't. Seren's eyes widened. Why not? Because I'm a lot of things. Ruthless, calculating, willing to do terrible things for the Empire. But I'm not my grandfather. I don't murder children just because they threaten my claim to stolen thrones. I'm not a child anymore. No, you're worse. You're a woman I'm starting to care about, and that makes killing you impossible. The confession settled between them. Heavy, true, dangerous. Seren reached up, touched his face. Her hand was shaking. You're an idiot. I know. You should kill me. It's the smart play, the strategic choice. I know that too. Then why don't you? Why? Because I'm tired of smart choices, tired of strategic sacrifices, tired of being the kind of king who survives by cutting out everything that makes him human. That's what kings do. They sacrifice. They choose empire over everything else. Then maybe I'm a terrible king. Seren laughed, sharp, bitter. You're the best king this empire has had in generations. Everyone says so, even your enemies. My enemies are currently in the dungeon waiting to be executed. Their opinions don't count. They count enough that you're here instead of killing me. Valor stood, pulled her up with him. Here's what's going to happen. The mountain clans are advancing. They'll be here in 3 days. We're going to defend this capital with everything we have. And when it's over, if we survive, we're going to figure out what to do about you. What if I remember? Seren asked. What if the memories come back and I decide I want the throne? Then we'll deal with it, together. You'd share power with me? With the person who has a legitimate claim to everything you've built? I'd consider it, if it meant not having to kill you. That's insane. Welcome to my entire life right now. Seren stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Maybe this was what happened when kings stopped making decisions based on fear and started making them based on something more dangerous. Hope. The kind that got people killed. An explosion shook the palace. Loud. Close. Too close. Valor's combat instincts kicked in immediately. He grabbed Seren, pulled her away from the window. Another explosion. Closer. Then screaming. Valor moved to the door, yanked it open. The hallway was chaos. Servants running, guards mobilizing, smoke filtering through the corridors. Commander Thane appeared, face covered in soot. Your Majesty, the clans didn't wait. They're attacking now. Siege weapons. They must have moved through the night. How did they get so close without detection? Someone gave them the patrol routes. Someone inside the palace. Valor's blood went ice. The council. Imprisoned council members can't communicate. They already communicated before we arrested them. This was their contingency, attack coordinates, timing, everything. Another explosion rattled the walls. How many? Valor demanded. At least 5,000 at the gates. More coming. They're coordinated, professional. This isn't a raid. It's an invasion. Valor turned back to Seren. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me. I can fight, she said. I know you can. That's not the point. You're the heir. If you die, everything dies with you. I'm not the heir. I don't even remember being her. Your memory doesn't change your blood. Stay. Here. He left before she could argue, moving fast, mind already shifting into combat mode. The mode that had kept him alive through 15 years of threats and assassination attempts and political warfare. The mode that required shutting down everything human and becoming pure survival instinct. The palace was transforming into a fortress. Soldiers running to positions. Civilians being evacuated to lower levels. Weapons being distributed. The machinery of war engaging with practiced efficiency. Valor reached the war room. Kale was already there. Maps spread. Positions marked. Report, Valor ordered. 5,000 at the main gates. 2,000 flanking east. Another 1,000 west. They're trying to surround us. Total defenders? 3,000 palace guard. Maybe another 1,000 if we arm the servants. 4,000 against 8,000. Bad odds. Terrible odds, Kyle corrected. And the southern legions are still 2 days out. We're alone until then. Then we hold for 2 days. That's impossible. Impossible is what we do. Get me siege defense protocols, reinforce the gates, set up kill zones in the courtyard. If they breach, make them pay for every inch. And if we can't hold? Valor looked at his cousin. Then we make our last stand count. But we're not dying today. How do you know? Because I haven't finished what I started. Kael studied his face. This is about her, isn't it? Seren. This is about not letting traitors win. She's just the excuse. That's a lie? Probably, but it's the lie I'm living right now. Get the defenses ready. I'll address the troops. Valor climbed to the battlements, looked down at the army forming below. Thousands of warriors, organized, deadly, bent on destroying everything he'd built. And somewhere in that mass of violence and chaos was the answer to who'd betrayed him, who'd coordinated this attack, who'd decided that removing him was worth burning the entire empire. He looked at his own forces, outnumbered, outmatched, holding position through discipline and training. They needed a reason to fight, a reason beyond duty or fear. They needed to believe this was winnable. Valor's voice carried across the courtyard when he spoke, loud, clear, absolute. They're coming for your homes, your families, your lives. They think we're weak, think we're divided, think one woman in the palace has made your king vulnerable. He paused. Let that sink in. They're wrong. I'm not vulnerable. I'm pissed off. And when I'm pissed off, I don't compromise. I don't negotiate. I don't surrender. I burn everything until only truth remains. The soldiers shifted, attention complete. Today we defend this palace, not because it's perfect, not because it's always been just, but because it's ours. Because we built it, because we bled for it, and because I'll be damned if I let a conspiracy of cowards and traitors take it from us. He drew his sword. The blade caught sunlight, flashed like lightning. They want war. We'll give them war. They want blood. We'll paint the walls with it. They want to test whether this empire still has teeth. He smiled, cold, predatory. Let's show them what happens when you corner something that refuses to die. The roar that answered shook the palace walls, and somewhere in the east wing, Seren heard it, felt it, understood that the man she'd started to care about was about to become the monster his empire needed, the monster who might save them all, or destroy everything trying. Not. The first wave hit at noon, battering rams against the gates, siege ladders against the walls, arrows darkening the sky like locusts. Valor fought on the front battlements, sword in hand, instinct guiding every movement. He'd trained for this his entire life. Combat wasn't theory for him. It was muscle memory. A warrior crested the wall. Valor met him, blade to blade. The clash of steel rang out. 3 moves, the warrior fell. Dead before he hit the stone. Another came, then another. Valor moved through them like death-given form, precise, efficient, brutal. This was what people forgot about kings. They saw the crown and the throne and the political maneuvering. They forgot that before the politics, there was violence, raw, necessary, fundamental. You didn't take thrones by asking nicely. You took them by being willing to kill anyone who stood in your way. Valor had killed his first man at 16, his 10th by 18, lost count somewhere around 30. And now he was adding to that count with the kind of mechanical efficiency that came from pure survival instinct. Commander Thane fought beside him, methodical, professional. They're testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. They won't find any, Valor said between strikes. They have the numbers. Numbers don't win wars. Will does. An explosion rocked the eastern wall. Stone crumbling. Warriors pouring through the breach. Valor didn't hesitate. Thane, hold the gates. I'll take the breach. Your Majesty, that's suicide. That's an order. He ran, fast, toward the breach where enemy forces were flooding in, toward the impossible odds that should have made him retreat. Should have. But retreat wasn't in his vocabulary. He hit the first wave like a battering ram, sword cutting through armor and flesh with equal efficiency. Blood sprayed, men screamed, chaos erupted. And in the center of it all, Valor fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Because maybe he didn't. Maybe he'd already lost everything that mattered the moment he'd chosen to protect Seren instead of killing her. Maybe this was just the consequence playing out in real time. But if he was going down, he was taking an army with him. A blade caught his shoulder. Pain flared. He ignored it, spun, killed the attacker, kept moving. Another cut across his ribs, shallow, painful, irrelevant. He was bleeding, exhausted, surrounded, and he'd never felt more alive. This was what it meant to be alpha. Not the politics, not the strategy, not the careful manipulation of power structures. This, raw, unfiltered, violent survival, the kind where you either broke your enemies or they broke you. And Valor didn't break. He bent. He adapted. He bled. But he didn't break. The enemy forces at the breach started falling back, not from fear, from recognition. They'd come expecting a politician, a king who ruled through others. They'd found a warrior who ruled through himself. Valor stood in the breach, covered in blood, most of it not his own, breathing hard, sword dripping. "Anyone else?" he called out. Silence. Then retreat. The enemy forces pulling back, regrouping. Thane appeared beside him. They're withdrawing, for now. How long? Until nightfall, maybe less. They'll come back stronger. Then we use the time, reinforce the breach, redistribute forces, prepare for the next wave. Your Majesty, you're wounded. Valor looked down, blood soaking through his shirt. Multiple cuts. Nothing fatal. Nothing that would stop him. I've had worse. You need medical attention. I need this palace defended. Medical attention can wait. He moved through the courtyard, assessing damage, counting losses, calculating odds. They'd held the first wave. Barely. The next one would be worse. And the one after that would be the end unless something changed. Valor reached the war room. Kael was there, face pale. The western flank is collapsing, Kael reported. We've lost 30 men, maybe more. Redeploy from the north, shore up the west. That leaves the north vulnerable. The north has natural defenses, the west doesn't. Make the call. Kael hesitated, just for a second. And in that hesitation, Valor saw something that made his blood freeze. Doubt. Not tactical doubt, not strategic uncertainty, personal doubt. The kind that said Kael was questioning whether Valor's decisions were sound, whether his judgment was compromised, whether the king was still thinking clearly. Do it, Valor ordered, flat, absolute. Now! Kael nodded, left, but the damage was done. Valor had seen the crack, the moment where even his most trusted advisor wondered if he was fit to lead. And if Kael was questioning him, others would too. That's how empires fell. Not from external threats, from internal erosion, from the moment when people stopped believing in their leader's invincibility. Valor pressed his hand against his wounded shoulder. Pain grounded him, focused him. He couldn't afford doubt, couldn't afford weakness. He was the alpha, the king, the absolute authority, and he needed to prove it. A messenger burst in. Your Majesty, the prisoner Fenwick is requesting an audience. Tell him to rot. He says he has information about the attack, about the coordination. Valor went still. Bring him up. Under guard. Minutes later, Duke Fenwick was dragged into the room, still in chains, still defiant, but with something new in his eyes. Desperation. Your Majesty, he said, voice hoarse. I can help you. You can die. That would help tremendously. The clans. I know their strategy, their weak points. I can tell you how to beat them. In exchange for what? Your life? In exchange for consideration. Mercy. Understanding that we were trying to save the empire, not destroy it. Valor moved close, inches from Fenwick's face. You coordinated with hostile forces to remove me from power. You used a woman I care about as justification. You nearly destroyed everything I've built. And now you want mercy? I want to survive. Same as you. The difference is, I deserve to survive. You don't. But I have information you need. The clans have a secondary force. 15,000 more. Coming from the mountain passes. They'll be here by tomorrow. And when they arrive, you'll be completely surrounded. Outnumbered 3-1. You can't win that fight. Valor felt ice spread through his chest. You're lying, I'm telling you the truth you don't want to hear. We coordinated 3 waves, the first to test you, the second to weaken you, the third to finish you. You've survived wave 1. You won't survive wave 3. Then we'll die fighting. Or you could let me help. Let me send a message to the clans. Tell them the conspiracy has failed. Tell them to stand down. Why would they listen to you? Because I'm the one who promised them the throne. If I withdraw that promise, they lose their justification. Valor studied Fenwick's face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle, found only desperation, which didn't mean it wasn't a trap, but it was the only option he had. If you're lying, Valor said quietly, I won't execute you. I'll let the survivors of this siege decide what to do with you, and I promise you, they'll be creative. I'm not lying. I want to live, even if it means betraying everyone I conspired with. Survival instinct, the most fundamental human drive, the one that made people do terrible things and worse bargains. Valor understood it, lived by it, couldn't condemn it without being a hypocrite. Write the message, he ordered. Commander Thane will verify it. If it's legitimate, I'll consider your request. And if it works, then you'll die quickly instead of slowly. That's the best mercy you're getting. Fenwick nodded, defeated, desperate, but still alive, which was more than he deserved. The message was written, sent through a messenger under white flag, delivered to the clan forces outside the gates. And now they waited, to see if betrayal could undo betrayal, to see if the conspiracy that had started this could end it, to see if survival instinct was stronger than ideology. Night fell with no answer. The clan forces held position, not attacking, not retreating, just waiting. Valor stood on the battlements watching them, counting fires, estimating numbers, calculating odds that all came out bad. Kael joined him, silent, tense. You think they'll accept Fenwick's terms? Kael asked. No. I think they'll use it as an opportunity to regroup and come back stronger. Then why send the message? Because hope is a weapon, even false hope. It keeps people fighting longer than despair would. That's cynical. That's leadership. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then, I need to tell you something. Valor turned, looked at his cousin's face, saw something there that made his instincts scream warnings. Say it, he ordered. I know about Seren, about who she really is. I've known since before you did. The confession dropped between them like a body. Valor went very still, the kind of still that preceded violence. How long? Since the festival. I had her investigated, found the records, connected the pieces. And you didn't tell me? I was protecting you. By lying? By giving you time to make the right choice. Which was killing her before she became a threat. Valor's hand moved to his sword. Instinct, muscle memory. You think I should have killed her? I think you should have done what was necessary for the Empire. Instead, you let emotion compromise your judgment. My judgment is fine. Your judgment got us into a siege we can't win. Your judgment nearly destroyed the Empire. Your judgment chose a woman over stability. I chose principle over fear. You chose weakness over strength. The words hung in the air. Accusation, challenge, truth. Valor felt rage build in his chest, the kind that had fueled 15 years of survival, the kind that made him dangerous. Be very careful what you say next, cousin. Or what? You'll kill me? Add me to the list of people you've sacrificed for a woman who doesn't even remember who she is? She's the rightful heir. She's a threat. And the fact that you can't see that proves you're compromised. Valor drew his sword, fast, efficient, held it against Kael's throat. Kael didn't flinch, just looked at him with something like pity. Do it, Kael said quietly. Prove that you've completely lost perspective. Kill the one person who's been loyal to you since childhood. Add my blood to all the others you've spilled trying to protect a throne built on murder. This isn't about the throne. It's always about the throne. You just forgot that temporarily. Valor pressed the blade closer, drew blood. I should kill you for the betrayal. What betrayal? Knowing the truth and trying to protect you from it? Not trusting me to make my own choices. Your choices are destroying us. Then let them. At least they're mine. Kyle smiled, sad, tired. You really care about her. Enough to burn everything. Yes. Then you're a fool. Probably. Velor lowered the sword, stepped back. Get out of my sight. We're in the middle of a siege. I don't care. Get out before I change my mind about killing you. Kale looked at him for a long moment, then turned, walked away, leaving Velor alone on the battlements with his sword and his choices and the weight of an empire that might not survive his humanity. He looked out at the enemy forces, at the impossible odds, at the future that was rapidly running out of options, and made a decision. If he was going to die defending this palace, he was going to die knowing he'd chosen something real over something strategic. He sheathed his sword, headed for the east wing, toward Seren, toward the woman who might be his salvation or his destruction, toward the only choice that mattered. The guards at her door tried to stop him. He walked past them like they didn't exist, opened the door. Seren stood at the window, still, quiet, like she'd been waiting. She turned when he entered, saw the blood, the exhaustion, the determination. It's bad, isn't it? She said. Worse than bad. We're outnumbered, surrounded, and reinforcements won't arrive in time. Then why are you here instead of commanding the defenses? Because if I'm going to die tonight, I want to die knowing I made at least one choice that was mine, not the Empire's, not duties, mine. Seren's eyes widened. What are you saying? Velor crossed the distance between them, stood close enough to see the silver flecks in her eyes, close enough to feel the heat of her breath. I'm saying I don't care who you were. I care who you are. And who you are is the person I'm choosing. Over the Empire. Over survival. Over everything. That's insane. I know. You'll lose everything. I already lost it the moment I decided not to kill you. Then why? He kissed her. Not gentle, not tentative, hard, desperate. Like a man trying to steal something precious before the world ended. Seren froze for a heartbeat, then kissed him back with equal desperation, equal need, equal recognition that this might be the last real thing either of them ever had. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Seren whispered, "You're going to regret this." Probably, Velor agreed, but not tonight. An explosion shook the palace, larger than before, closer, then another, then the sound of gates breaking. They were coming. Wave 2. And this time there would be no holding them back. Velor looked at Seren one last time, memorizing her face, her eyes, the way she looked at him like he was human instead of king. Stay here, he ordered. Lock the door. If we fall, run. Get as far from this palace as you can. Live. Remember. Survive. I'm not running. You're the heir. You have to survive. I'm not the heir. I'm just a woman who cares about an idiot king who's about to get himself killed. Velor almost smiled. Then pray I'm good enough to stay alive. I don't pray, I fight. Not tonight, you don't. He left before she could argue, moving fast, back to the battlements, back to the war, back to the violence that would decide whether his empire survived or burned. And as he ran through corridors filled with smoke and screaming, one thought crystallized in his mind. He'd made his choice. Now he had to live with it, or die defending it. Either way, he was done compromising, done sacrificing, done being the king everyone needed him to be. Tonight, he was just a man fighting for something real. And if that wasn't enough to save the Empire, then the Empire deserved to burn. The second wave hit like divine wrath made manifest. Velor reached the main gates just as they splintered, wood and iron exploding inward, warriors pouring through the breach like floodwater through a broken dam. He didn't hesitate, didn't calculate odds, didn't think about survival. He just moved, sword in hand, instinct guiding every strike, every parry, every kill. This was beyond strategy now, beyond tactics. This was raw survival distilled to its purest form. Kill or be killed. Win or die. No middle ground. A blade caught his thigh. He felt muscle tear. Ignored it, spun. Killed the attacker. Kept moving. Blood everywhere. His own mixing with theirs. The courtyard becoming a slaughterhouse. And in the center of it all, Velor fought like a man who'd already accepted death and decided to make it wait. Because that's what alpha truly means. Not dominance, not control, not the ability to make others submit. It means the willingness to stand when everything rational says fall, to fight when logic says surrender, to choose defiance over preservation. Most people talk about strength like it's something you're born with, like it's genetic, inevitable, a gift from fate. But real strength is a choice, made in the moment when your body is screaming to quit and your mind is offering 1,000 rational reasons to give up. It's the choice to take one more step, throw one more punch, endure one more second. And Valor had been making that choice for 15 years. He'd make it 15 more if that's what survival required. Commander Thane appeared beside him, blood streaming from a head wound. The western wall is falling. We need to retreat to the inner keep. No retreat. We hold the courtyard. Your Majesty, that's suicide. Then I'll die here, but I'm not giving them one more inch. Thane looked at him like he was insane. Maybe he was. Maybe that's what happened when you chose principle over survival, when you decided some things were worth dying for, like the woman in the East Wing who might be the rightful queen, like the empire you'd built from blood and broken promises, like the idea that you got to choose your own death instead of letting it choose you. "Hold the line," Valor roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Every man, every blade, we hold." The defenders rallied, not because they believed it was possible, but because their king was standing in the center of hell, refusing to move. Leadership isn't about being right. It's about being present, about showing up in the worst moments and not flinching, about making people believe that if you're willing to die for this, maybe it's worth living for. Valor embodied that, bleeding, exhausted, surrounded, but unbroken. The enemy forces pressed harder, overwhelming, relentless. And then something changed. A horn sounded. Not from the attackers, from outside the palace, from the direction of the southern road. Then another, and another. Valor risked a glance, saw banners approaching, military formations, organized, professional, the Southern Legions. They'd arrived a full day early. Hope flared in his chest, dangerous, intoxicating, the kind that got people killed when they started believing instead of fighting. But it was enough. The enemy forces saw it too, saw the fresh troops arriving, saw the odds shifting, and they hesitated. That hesitation cost them everything. Valor pressed the advantage. Push. Drive them back. Show them what happens when they challenge this empire. The palace defenders surged forward, energized, desperate, turning defense into offense. The enemy line broke. Not completely, not routed, but cracked, fractured. And in warfare, a crack is all you need. The Southern Legions hit the enemy's rear flank, coordinated, devastating, turning a siege into a slaughter. The battle shifted, momentum swinging like a pendulum, what had been certain defeat becoming possible survival. Valor fought through it all, mechanical, efficient, killing until his arms burned and his sword felt like it weighed more than the crown. Minutes became hours. Hours became an eternity of blood and steel and screaming. And then, finally, it was over. Not clean, not neat, just over. The enemy forces in full retreat, running for the mountain passes they'd come from, leaving behind their dead and their siege equipment and their failed attempt to overthrow the empire. Valor stood in the courtyard, surrounded by bodies, blood soaking the stones, smoke rising from a dozen fires. Victory. But the kind that felt like defeat. Because victory measured in corpses and burning buildings and exhausted men who'd barely survived wasn't victory at all. It was just slightly better organized dying. The truth about war that poets never write about is this. Winning doesn't feel triumphant. It feels hollow. Like you've traded pieces of your humanity for territory that wasn't worth the price. Like you've survived but lost something essential in the process. Valor felt that hollowness now. Bone deep, soul tired. He'd won. The empire stood. The conspiracy crushed. But at what cost? Commander Thane approached, limping badly, face gray with exhaustion and blood loss. But alive. Still functional, still professional. Your Majesty, the palace is secure. Casualties? 700 dead. Maybe more. Twice that wounded. We're still counting. 700 lives. 700 families destroyed. 700 futures erased. All because some men in a room had decided their ambition was worth more than stability. Valor felt exhaustion crash over him. Not physical, deeper. The kind that came from understanding the true cost of power. "Round up the survivors," he ordered. Voice flat, empty. "Get me a count of the enemy forces, and find out if any of the council's messengers made it out." "Already done, sire." Duke Fenwick's message never reached the clan leaders. They ignored it completely, used it as confirmation we were weak, accelerated their attack. So he lied about being able to stop them. Or they didn't care. Hard to say which. Either way, the message made things worse. Valor nodded slowly, too tired to feel betrayed, too exhausted to feel anything except the weight of all those bodies piled in the courtyard. People talk about betrayal like it's a knife in the back. Sharp, sudden, clean. But real betrayal is slower. It's the accumulation of small lies, small compromises, small choices to serve yourself instead of the whole. It builds like rot in wood, invisible until the structure collapses. And Valor had been too focused on external threats to see the rot inside his own foundation. That was on him, his failure, his blindness. "Execute him," Valor said quietly. "Fenwick and the others. Public. Tomorrow at dawn. Make it clear what happens to traitors." "Your Majesty, I don't want to hear arguments. I don't want to hear justifications. They conspired. They coordinated with hostile forces. They nearly destroyed everything. They die. That's how this works." Thane hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then saluted. "As you command, sire." He walked away. Efficient, professional, leaving Valor alone in a courtyard full of corpses. Valor looked down at his hands, covered in blood, shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline crash. These were the hands that had built an empire, that had killed more men than he could count, that had just fought through a siege that should have killed him. These were also the hands that had touched Soren's face with something like tenderness. The contradiction nearly broke him. How did you reconcile being gentle with being ruthless? How did you hold someone carefully while also being the kind of person who could execute 7 men without hesitation? The answer, you didn't. You just lived with the contradiction, accepted that humans weren't consistent, that you could be both the monster the Empire needed and the man who wanted something real. And you hoped the person you cared about could accept both versions. Valor limped toward the east wing, every step agony, every breath a reminder that he'd been cut at least a dozen times and was running on pure stubborn refusal to collapse. He needed to see her, needed to confirm she was safe, needed to know that whatever else he'd destroyed today, he'd at least saved the one thing that mattered. The guards at her door were gone, replaced by bodies, enemy bodies. Valor's blood went cold despite the heat of battle still radiating from his skin. They'd found her, reached her quarters, tried to... He shoved the door open. Soren stood in the center of the room, alive, whole, breathing hard, and surrounded by 4 dead warriors. She held a sword, bloody, professional grip, combat stance that spoke of training she shouldn't possess. She looked at Valor, eyes wide, shocked at herself, at what she'd done, at what she'd remembered how to do. "I remembered," she said quietly, voice shaking but controlled, "when they came through the door. When I thought I was going to die. Everything came back." Valor stepped over the bodies, moved to her slowly, carefully, like approaching something wild that might bolt. He took the sword from her shaking hands, set it down with deliberate care. "Everything?" he asked. "Everything. My family, the palace, the purge. The woman who smuggled me out, Marin. She was my mother's handmaiden. She took me north, changed my name, raised me to forget, told me the past was dead and only survival mattered. And now? Now I remember the throne room where my father held court. The gardens where my mother taught me about politics disguised as botany lessons. The night soldiers came, the screaming, the blood, being carried through secret passages, darkness, then nothing, then the vineyard, then Marin telling me I was her daughter, and the nightmares were just dreams." Soren's voice remained steady, but her eyes told a different story. Horror, grief, rage, all compressed into something cold and controlled. "I'm Sorentha Nyx," she continued, "daughter of King Aldrich, last surviving heir of the dynasty your grandfather destroyed to take this throne." The confession settled between them. Heavy, irrevocable, true. Valor should have felt threatened, should have immediately calculated how to neutralize this new danger. Instead, he just felt tired. I know, he said simply. You knew before. I suspected, then confirmed in the archives, then chose not to care. Why? Because you're more than your bloodline, more than your claim. You're the person who survived annihilation and came back stronger, and that's worth more than any crown. Seren's eyes filled, not quite tears, just pressure, emotion finding no outlet. My family is dead because of yours. I know. You're sitting on a throne built from their bones. I know that too. And you think we can just, what, pretend that doesn't matter? No. I think we acknowledge it matters, and then choose what to do about it. What if I want the throne back? What if I want revenge? What if I want to finish what your grandfather started by erasing your bloodline the way mine was erased? Valor met her eyes, unflinching. Then you'd have every right, and I'd understand, and we'd fight, and one of us would die, and the cycle would continue, another purge, another hidden heir, another generation of lies and violence. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. I can't tell you what to want, can't tell you how to process what was done to you, can only tell you what I'm choosing. Which is? You. Partnership. Building something new instead of defending something broken, even if it costs me everything. Seren stared at him like he'd spoken a language she didn't understand. Maybe he had. Maybe the language of choosing present humanity over past grievances didn't exist in the vocabulary of empire and revenge. But it existed in his vocabulary now, because he'd spent 15 years being what the empire needed, being the ruthless king, the strategic calculator, the man who sacrificed anything for stability. And it had worked. The empire stood. Power consolidated, order maintained. But at what cost? 700 bodies in the courtyard, a council of traitors, an heir he'd almost killed just for existing, a cousin who'd lost faith in him, all that sacrifice, all that ruthlessness, all that control, and he'd nearly lost everything anyway. The fundamental lie of absolute power is that it makes you safe, that if you're strong enough, ruthless enough, controlled enough, you can eliminate all threats, can survive anything. But power doesn't eliminate threats. It multiplies them. Because the more you have, the more people want to take it, and the harder you hold on, the more isolated you become. Until you're standing alone on a pile of corpses, wondering why victory feels like defeat. Valor had reached that point, standing in a room with 4 dead warriors and a woman who could legally destroy him, understanding that all his strength, all his ruthlessness, all his control had brought him here, to a choice. Kill the threat and stay alone, or trust the person and risk everything. I don't know what happens next, Valor said quietly. I don't know if we can make this work. I don't know if the Empire will accept you. I don't know if you even want to stay. But I know this. I'm done making decisions based on fear, done sacrificing people for strategy, done being the kind of king who survives by cutting out everything human. Then what kind of king will you be? The kind who shares power with the person who has as much right to it as I do. The kind who admits his grandfather was a murderer and his throne is stolen. The kind who tries to build something new instead of defending something rotten. That's insane. Probably. But I'm tired of sane. Sane got me a palace full of traitors and an empire held together by fear. I'd rather try insane and see what happens. Seren reached out, touched his face. Her hand came away bloody. His blood, mixed with the blood of everyone he'd killed today. You're bleeding, she said. Badly. I know. You need medical attention, now. I know that too. Then why are you here instead of getting help? Because I needed to see you, needed to know you were alive, needed to tell you the truth before blood loss made me stupid or dead. What truth? Valor took her hand, held it despite the blood, despite the exhaustion making his vision blur, despite everything. That I choose you. Over the Empire. Over survival. Over everything. And if that's the wrong choice, if it destroys everything I've built, I'll live with it. Because for once in my life, I made a choice that was mine instead of necessary. Seren's breath caught. You're an idiot. I've been told. You're going to die from blood loss while making romantic declarations. Seems on brand. Sit down before you fall down. She pushed him toward a chair. He collapsed into it, grateful, exhausted beyond measure. Seren moved with sudden efficiency, tearing fabric, creating bandages, treating his wounds with practiced hands that remembered training from a childhood spent preparing to rule. I killed 4 men, she said quietly while working. Didn't hesitate, didn't freeze, just moved, like my body remembered even though my mind didn't. You were trained. I was 7 when they evacuated me. No 7-year-old has that kind of training. Royal children do. When their parents know assassination is always possible. When survival means being ready for violence before you can read. That's barbaric. That's empire. That's what it costs to hold power. Children trained to kill before they understand why killing is wrong. Seren tied off a bandage, harder than necessary. I don't want that. If I'm queen, if we're doing this together, I don't want children raised as weapons. Then we change it, make it different, better. You say that like it's simple. It's not simple, it's impossible. But impossible is what we do. She almost smiled. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. She finished with his wounds, stepped back, looked at her bloody hands. What happens now? Now I probably pass out from blood loss. You call for medical help. They patch me up properly. Tomorrow we execute the traitors. Day after we start rebuilding. And me? What happens to me? That's your choice. Stay, go, claim the throne, share it, take revenge, build peace, whatever you want. I'm done making choices for other people. Seren looked at him for a long moment, calculating, processing, deciding. Then she moved to the door, called for guards and medics, gave orders with natural authority that spoke of bloodline and training and remembered power. When she turned back, Veilor was slumping in the chair, consciousness fading. Don't die, she said. Not a plea. A command. Trying not to, he mumbled. Try harder. I didn't survive a purge and remember who I am just to watch you bleed out in my quarters. Noted. Very romantic. Appreciate the sentiment. Shut up and stay conscious. Yes, Your Majesty. The words slipped out. Automatic. True. Seren froze. Don't call me that. Why not? It's what you are. I'm a vineyard keeper who remembers being someone else. That doesn't make me a queen. Disagrees. You just gave orders to my guards and they obeyed. You just treated wounds like you've done it before. You just killed 4 warriors without hesitation. That's not a vineyard keeper. That's exactly a queen. I don't want to be a queen. Neither did I want to be a king. We don't get to choose our bloodlines, just what we do with them. Medical staff arrived. Efficient, professional, started working on Veilor's wounds properly. Seren stepped back, watching, silent. And Veilor, fading into unconsciousness, induced by blood loss and exhaustion, saw her clearly. Not Seren the vineyard keeper, not the woman who'd caught his attention at the festival. Sorentha Nyx, queen by blood, ruler by right, partner by choice, if she chose to be. His last thought before darkness took him was simple. Please choose this. Choose me. Choose us. Then nothing. Veilor woke 3 days later. Clean bed, bandaged properly, pain manageable, alive. The first face he saw was Kael's. His cousin sat in a chair beside the bed, looking exhausted, worried, guilty. You're awake, Kael said. Relieved. Apparently. How long? 3 days. You lost a lot of blood. Infection set in. We weren't sure you'd make it. Sorry to disappoint. Don't be an ass. I thought I'd lost you. Veilor studied his cousin's face, saw genuine fear there, genuine relief. You thought I'd die and leave you to clean up the mess. I thought you'd die and I'd never get to apologize for doubting you. You had reason to doubt. I was compromised. You were human, not the same thing. Veilor tried to sit up. Pain flared. Kyle helped him, gentle, careful. Where's Seren? Valor asked. Sorrentha, Kael corrected. She's using her real name now, and she's in the throne room, addressing the noble houses, explaining who she is, claiming her birthright. Valor's blood went cold. Without me? You were unconscious. She couldn't wait. The rumors were spreading. She needed to control the narrative. And she's magnificent, terrifying, everything a queen should be. Half the nobles want to crown her immediately. The other half want her executed as a threat. It's chaos. I need to get up. You need to heal. She's handling it. She shouldn't have to handle it alone. She's not alone. I'm backing her. Commander Thane is backing her. The Southern Legions are backing her, and she made it very clear that anyone who challenges her legitimacy challenges you. So most people are being cautious. Valor felt something in his chest ease slightly. She's protecting me. She's protecting both of you. Smart strategy. Claims you're partners. Co-rulers. Both legitimate. Both necessary. Forces people to accept both or reject both. Did I mention she's magnificent? You were unconscious, but yes, frequently. Apparently you talked about her constantly while delirious from fever. What did I say? Mostly incoherent declarations of devotion. Some strategic planning. One full speech about how power structures need to evolve or die. Very inspiring. Also very rambling. Valor closed his eyes. I'm never living that down. Probably not. But the good news is half the palace thinks you're romantic. The other half thinks you've lost your mind. Either way, you're memorable. Wonderful. Kael's expression turned serious. She could have claimed the throne entirely while you were unconscious. Could have had you declared unfit. Could have taken everything. She didn't. She waited. Protected your position. Insisted on partnership. That means something. It means she's better than I deserve. It means she chose you too. Don't waste it. Valor opened his eyes, looked at his cousin. I'm sorry for doubting you, for suspecting you were part of the conspiracy. You had reason. I kept secrets about her identity. That's betrayal adjacent. You were protecting me. I was trying to, badly. Should have trusted you to make your own choices. Lesson learned? Painfully. Yes. They sat in silence for a moment, comfortable, real. Then Kael stood. I'll tell her you're awake. She'll want to know. How did the executions go? Efficiently? Duke Fenwick died cursing your name. The others were more subdued. The crowd was mostly silent. No celebrations, just witnessing. Good. How it should be. Necessary. Not enjoyable. You're a complicated man, cousin. I'm a tired man who's made too many hard choices and wants to stop. Then stop. Let Sorrentha carry some of the weight. That's what partnership means. Kael left, leaving Valor alone with his thoughts and his healing wounds and the understanding that everything had changed. He'd survived the siege, survived the betrayal, survived blood loss that should have killed him. Now came the hard part, surviving peace, building something new with a woman who had every reason to hate him and was choosing partnership instead. That would be harder than any battle, more complicated than any war, and absolutely worth it. Sorrentha entered his chambers an hour later. She'd changed, not just clothes, but bearing. She wore royal blue, simple but elegant, hair pulled back, posture perfect. She looked like a queen, moved like one, spoke like one. You're awake, she said. Good. I need your input on the restructuring proposal. Nice to see you too. Thanks for asking how I feel. You're alive. That's all that matters. Now focus. The noble houses are divided. We need to present a united front or they'll tear us apart. Valor smiled despite the pain. You're enjoying this. I'm surviving this. Not the same thing. But her eyes said differently, said she was thriving, coming alive, becoming who she was always meant to be. She moved to his bedside, sat, dropped the queen performance just slightly. How are you really? Alive, healing, grateful you didn't take the throne while I was unconscious. I considered it, would have been easier, cleaner, less complicated. Why didn't you? Because I made a choice 3 days ago, when you were bleeding out in my quarters, when I could have let you die and claimed everything. I chose partnership over power. I'm not changing that choice just because it's harder. Even though you'd be within your rights, Rights don't mean much when everyone you care about is dead. I spent 20 years alone, forgot who I was, survived on scraps of identity. I'm not doing that again. Not when I finally have someone who sees me and chooses me anyway. Valor reached out, took her hand. I choose you. Every day, every moment, even when it's stupid. Especially when it's stupid. That too, and she squeezed his hand. The noble houses are calling for a formal coronation, both of us. Joint ceremony, public, symbolic. What did you tell them? That I'd discuss it with my co-ruler and give them an answer. Very diplomatic. I'm learning. You're a terrible influence. I'm an excellent influence. You just survived your first political crisis without killing anyone. That's progress. I wanted to kill several people. Does that count? Wanting doesn't count. Acting does. You're doing fine. Sorrentha looked at their joined hands. Are we really doing this, ruling together, sharing everything? If you want to. I don't know what I want. I just got my memories back. I'm still processing that my entire childhood was erased, that I'm the last of my bloodline, that the man I'm choosing to partner with is descended from the man who murdered my family. Fair points. All valid. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. You almost died, but didn't. I'm stubborn like that. You're impossible like that. Also true. She leaned forward, rested her forehead against his, gentle, careful of his injuries. They stayed like that, breathing together. Two people who should have destroyed each other, choosing something different. We announced the joint coronation, Sorrentha said finally. In 1 month. Gives you time to heal, gives me time to prepare, gives the empire time to adjust. And if they don't adjust, then we make them, together. The way we make everything work, through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. That's not a strategy. It's the only strategy we have. And so far it's working. Valor pulled back enough to look at her, really look. You're terrifying, you know that? I'm a queen remembering how to rule. Of course I'm terrifying. You should be scared. I'm not scared. I'm impressed. Same thing. Not even close. She smiled. Small. Real. Get better. We have an empire to rebuild, and I'm not doing it alone. Yes, Your Majesty. Don't call me that unless you mean it. I mean it. You're my queen, my partner, my equal. Every title, every right, every responsibility. Sorrentha's eyes filled. But she didn't cry, just nodded. Then heal fast. I need you functional. The empire needs us both functional. She left. Purpose in every step. And Valor lay in bed understanding that he'd just witnessed the transformation of a woman into a queen. Not through conquest, not through bloodline alone. Through choice, through strength, through the willingness to claim what was hers while honoring what was shared. It was beautiful, terrifying, revolutionary, and absolutely worth every wound he'd taken to make it possible. Book. The coronation happened exactly 1 month later. The throne room packed with nobles, foreign dignitaries, military commanders, common citizens allowed inside for the first time in generations. Witness to history. Valor stood on one side of the throne, Sorrentha on the other. Between them, 2 crowns. Equal, identical. Symbolic. The High Chancellor spoke. Old, traditional. Uncomfortable with change, but professional enough to execute his duty. By blood and right, by choice and covenant, we crown 2 rulers. King Valor Draven, Queen Sorrentha Nyx. May their partnership be strength. May their rule be just. May their empire endure. He placed the first crown on Valor's head, heavy, familiar, lonely. Then the second on Sorrentha's, equal weight, equal authority, equal responsibility. They turned to face each other, looked into each other's eyes, and together they spoke the vow they'd written. Unprecedented, revolutionary, true. I vow to rule with wisdom over ambition, to choose truth over convenience, to share power instead of hoarding it, to build instead of merely maintaining, to honor the past while creating the future, and to remember that strength lies not in dominance, but in partnership. The crowd was silent, processing, understanding that they'd just witnessed something that changed everything. Then Kael started the applause, slow, deliberate, Others joined, gradually, then completely, until the throne room echoed with sound. Not just acceptance, recognition, that this was different, new, dangerous in the best way. Valor and Sorrentha turned to face their empire, together, equal, united. And the empire, slowly, uncertainly, but inevitably, bowed, not in submission, in respect. For two rulers who'd chosen partnership over power, who'd survived conspiracy and siege, who'd rebuilt from ruins, who'd proven that the strongest foundation wasn't fear, it was choice.
Kamu,
Months passed, then years. The dual rule worked. Not perfectly, not easily, but worked. They fought, frequently, about policy and implementation and philosophy, but fought together, against problems instead of each other. They rebuilt the empire, not on lies and fear, on transparency and consent. Slow, painful, revolutionary. Some nobles resisted, were removed, replaced with people who understood evolution or extinction. Some celebrated, were cautiously empowered, watched carefully. Most adapted, because humans are nothing if not adaptable. And Valor and Sorrentha ruled, side by side, learning from each other, balancing each other. His ruthless efficiency tempered by her measured wisdom, her idealistic vision grounded by his practical experience. Together, creating something neither could have built alone. And somewhere in the rebuilding, in the partnership, in the daily choice to work together instead of against each other, something unexpected happened. They fell in love. Not the dramatic kind, not the fairy tale version, the slow kind. Built on respect and shared burden and choosing each other every single day. The kind that said, I know all your flaws and damage, and I'm staying anyway. The kind that whispered late at night when the crown was off and the performance was done and they were just two people trying to survive together. The kind that didn't need declarations or grand gestures, just presence, choice, partnership. And that, it turned out, was the strongest foundation of all. Years later, they stood on the same balcony where Valor had first seen her, older, scarred, tired, but unbroken. Do you regret it? Sorrentha asked. The same question from years ago. No, Valor answered. The same answer, still true. You? No. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because hard things change you. Because hard things prove what you're made of. And we're made of stubbornness and partnership and refusal to break. That's very poetic for a woman who executed 2 conspirators last week. I contain multitudes. It's exhausting. Valor laughed, real, genuine. They stood together, looking out at an empire transformed. Not perfect, never perfect, but real. True. Built on choice instead of fear. And in that truth, they found something neither expected. Not just power, not just survival, but purpose. The kind that made you understand that the greatest strength wasn't in how much you could endure alone. It was in who you chose to stand beside when the world tried to break you. And they chose each other, every single day. Until choice became destiny, and destiny became the legacy they left behind. An empire that understood power wasn't about dominance. It was about partnership. And partnership, it turned out, was the strongest foundation of all.